up Guyu's trial with senators as the jury. President William Ruto has signed into law the 2025 finance bill passed by the National Assembly on Thursday last week. Unlike last year's bill that sparked protests that led to the killing of over 60 Kenyans, this year's bill does not increase taxes. However, the new finance bill aims to increase the amount of revenue collected by KRA by plugging loopholes in corruption and promoting growth in all sectors of the economy.
Your Excellency, the third bill to receive your assent will be the Finance Bill 2025, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2025. The bill honors Your Excellency's commitment to the nation that there will be no new taxes in this financial year. The bill sets out fiscal interventions designed to enhance the business environment and reform the tax regime, making Kenya a more competitive nation to invest in.
More than 10 people were killed in Wednesday's anti-finance bill memorial protest. This is according to Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen, who also said that another 400 people were injured, including police officers. 5 police stations were burned down in arson attacks. Speaking at a press conference on Wednesday, Murkomen termed the Wednesday's events. Speaking at a press conference yesterday, Murkomen termed Wednesday's events as terrorist attacks that amounted to a coup attempt.
What unfolded yesterday was not a protest. It was terrorism disguised as dissent. There was no peaceful demonstration. It was riots, chaos, and anarchy. More than 10 Kenyans were killed. Investigations are ongoing on the numbers and the circumstance that this happened. Over 400 were injured, close to 300 are police officers. Some left with injuries they will carry for the rest of their lives.
The CS insisted that the protests were sponsored, looting, targeting government-allied politicians. Murkomen also says the government has enough evidence to prosecute the perpetrators.
No person will be spared regardless of their political or financial status. I know it's been promised before that every time such violence is meted on citizens in the name of protesting, promises have been made before that criminals will be charged. I want to say, for avoidance of doubt, that the Inspector General of Police will follow the Constitution to the letter, and all these criminals will be arrested and investigated, including the financiers, including the vehicles that were bringing money in the name of protest, giving money to protesters in different corners of Nairobi, especially in Mwindibungu Street.
Meanwhile, families have begun identifying bodies of their kin who were killed during Wednesday's protests. 4 bodies with suspected gunshot wounds were positively identified at the Nairobi funeral home. 17-year-old Ian Opango was shot below the right eye. David Mwangi was reportedly shot outside Embakasi Girls' School on Mukuru Street, while Fred Wanyonyi, a security guard, was shot at KPLC's Steamer Plaza headquarters while manning the gate. The lifeless body of the 23-year-old Kevin Njau was found in Kikuyu town. That's the News Wire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
.5 SpiceFM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
One of the things that are ailing our country is negative ethnicity. You find you as a state officer, instead of thinking as a Kenyan, you think like a tribal person.
Let me tell you something. The biggest problem we have had in this country is a leadership deficit. There is nothing that you are going to do in the process of change if you are not a risk taker. So you really have to pursue your vision to a logical conclusion and even be ready to step on people's toes.
When it comes to the economy, you can run away with it. They say statistics are like bikinis. They reveal a lot, but they conceal the vitals. And so government people would throw statistics at you and tell you they're revealing a lot of information to you, but it's really concealing the real vitals.
We need to get out of that, because when we want to grow our democracy, one basic thing that really requires to be understood by the political class, by all of us, is institutions are critical.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Waliletea fujo Moi mpaka wakapata cooperation. Wakakuja wakasumbua Kibaki mpaka wakachukua nusu mkate. Wamekuja wakazungusha Uhuru hapo mpaka wakaenda na handshake, program yetu ikapotea, BBI ikaendelea, tukazama, tukaingia kwa madeni. Sasa mimi nimewaambia, hii serikali hii, mimi nawaambia hii serikali ni ya mahasla. Hakuna nusu mkate, hakuna handshake, hakuna hiyo borojo.
Jana nimeona wale wazee tulishinda. Ati hiyo mzee akisema ati he'll not be coerced or intimidated to joining our government. Wewe mzee sikia. We have no business within our government. Hatuna haja na hatugojei wewe. We are not looking for you and we have no time. Stop saying that people can force you to come to this government. Forget about being forced or coerced. We are not interested because sisi tuko na kazi ya kufanya.
Kama kuna mtu ako na namba ya William Ruto, arekodi hii video mtumie. Maisha yangu tangu nizaliwe sijawahi kuona mtu muongo, mfisadi, baradhuli, dhabdhabina kama William Samoei Ruto.
Mimi Hassan Joho nikitaka kuongea, mimi I don't even dream of engaging with them. Ati huyu akitaka aje aongee sio na mimi niongee na Ruto nini? Mimi nikamtafute atanipa nini? Wilbaro.
I wonder.
Nilipeleka Wilbaro mimi la kimtaani la kucheza nalo zamani.
We have a choice to reject over 60% of these names or give President Ruto his skunk. Apart from a few individuals who are not even more than 8, the rest are incompetent, unqualified, have integrity issues, are people who cannot deliver this country from where it is to the next level that we want the country to move in.
A few moments later.
Now forwarded the name of John Mbadi Ngongo to the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning. The Honorable Hassan Ali Joho, Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Having come from a Kikuyu radio background, I migrated to Spice because of the content.
I was born in a slum, but somehow I got a break in life. So sometimes when you see the sweating coming out because of the passion and whatever it is, behind the noise, there are people. And we share the same umbilical cord.
It shouldn't be like that. I am so disappointed. We used to tell Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga that he's doing politics of conmanship. And even President Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali hii ndio iko na conmanship ya hali ya juu. You cannot promise people that you reduce tax, then you double.
In politics, there is the issue of trust.
For you to turn around and then stab the same people who gave you that trust, there is no other level of dishonesty. Imabo, utaona dunia tu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
In this country, 6 families and 8,000 Kenyans control 90% of the GDP. We are not a country. We are a plantation. We work for Ruto.
When you're telling the judges court orders are papers or they will not obey court orders, they're sitting and you're seeking orders from them. So how are they supposed to interpret it? Isn't it an oxymoron?
When you see a judiciary that seems to be under some control somewhere, you start questioning. We have very powerful governors, but they don't use their offices to serve the people.
If you are not shameful to do what you are doing, why should we protect you?
I'm human. Everybody is human. So when you're told, kuja tuongee, I mean, you'd be a fool to say, staki kuongea. Conversations have to be had, you know?
People in leadership should only go into leadership if they are ready and willing to change the lot of the people.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Traffic.
Good morning, it's Friday. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads this morning as we get into it proper and coming to the end of the week, shall we? All right, a quick glance at the Thika Superhighway. We're seeing some traffic has already started to build up as you come in from that radar interchange, and then you make your way through then towards Survey. So a lot of activity, people are moving about, but we don't see any holdups, at least not for now. As you're coming in then from the eastern bypass and then heading towards North Airport Road, a little bit of traffic there also starting to form. All right, other parts of the city, I think we're looking okay, at least for now. I know we keep it to Nairobi, but then let's take a look at what's happening in other parts of the country today, and we'll give you an update in a short while. The intent is to keep things moving this Friday, so let's do it. We'll talk on SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Mimi. Niko salama kabisa. Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's fantastic to see you. Uko salama?
Nashukuru.
It was a long week.
It has been a long week.
It has been a long week.
It has been a long week.
So many things happening over a very few number of days, but here we are. Tunamshukuru Mungu.
Here we are. We give thanks.
Kabisa, kabisa.
Give thanks.
So it is the 27th of June, and here we are getting into the end of the week. So it's Friday, so it's Ndu and one Dennis down. So one Dennis up, essentially. And here we are to have the Situation Room conversations that we ought to. A number of things said yesterday, a number of opinions then put out, and unfortunately met with anger from a number of people and a number of quarters. From some of the conversations that we'll be having today. And as we get into it at 13 minutes past 6 o'clock, a very, very good morning to you. And Karibu Sana as we have Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room this morning with Ndu and Dennis. And as we get into it, Lydiah, good morning. Waving. Good to have you here, our audience on KTN as well. Okay, so we'll say hello to you in a minute as you trickle into the room. Let us know where you're tuned in from as we get into the show today. But let me tell you the conversations that we will be having. And our Lest We Forget segment will take us a few minutes from now, and we'll be talking with Kabando Wakabando. It was interesting because the Deputy President, the CS Ministry of Security and Internal Administration, members of Parliament, the minority leader, the majority leader, a number of people had a number of things to say about what happened on Wednesday during the protests and what the mood is as a result of that. Lest we forget that certain things are still happening, and that's what we'll have a conversation with Kabando Wakabando about when we talk to him in just a short while. We'll also then get into it excuse me, after that at 7 o'clock with our Healthy Friday conversation, which is around issues of rage, grief and resilience, why emotional intelligence matters. That's our Healthy Friday conversation. We see people and we think that the only time that you're sick or unwell is when you have, a physiological issue. But I'm telling you, the number of people who are walking around with burden in their minds that is affecting the things that they do is quite large. Dr. Samuel Murage is an expert trainer and communication coach, and he's going to be talking to us about why emotional intelligence matters. And then we will have a conversation around from headlines to headlines. It's what we see day after day. Where is Kenya headed? Dan Manzo, excuse me, is the senator for Makwene County, and Suba Churchill is the executive director of National Civil Society Center, and we'll be talking with them at 8. And then at 9 a.m. we will speak around issues of the youth perspective. Patrick Kungu is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and Marco Okoh is a youth coordinator of the National Students Council of Kenya. We're going to be looking into moving into governance, citizen side participation, where all this comes from, and we'll be having those conversations 6, 7, 8 and 9 as we wrap up the week on these important conversations. So that's what we do today. And before we say hello to you, because we can see that many of you have already gotten into the room this morning, how about we hear today's final proverb from Ethiopia?
Yes, today's final proverb still in Ethiopia, and just a few things that you've learned about Ethiopia is it's never been colonized. They're really for the Italians pushing them back. Then we also have the birthplace of coffee. Ethiopia considers itself the birthplace of coffee due to the coffee that they have there, and as well as 13-month calendar. We know that today they are in 2017, so if you're going to Ethiopia, you have to go back to 2017 and remember what you did then back in 2017. Perhaps it will be in election time, yeah?
Yeah, 2017, around this time, we're going toward the polls, isn't it? Campaign mode, proper.
Yeah, reliving 2 elections in 1 year. You know, then again, it is also home of Blue Nile. Ethiopia is actually constructing that large power plant, the dam that would serve the people and ensure that they have more power. So today's proverb: no one washes their hands with only one finger. No one washes their hands with only one finger.
Wow. You could try.
You could try.
But you wouldn't succeed. I guess to do things right, all hands have to be on deck, literally.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah, pretty much goes with the other proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with people.
Go together.
Yeah.
For sure. You can't do it alone. And to be effective, you really have to employ all resources possible.
Yes.
Indeed. Good to see. It will be good to hear what people have to say about that today as we get into conversations. And I know that folks are feeling a little bit downtrodden about some of the positions that we heard yesterday coming out of the coming off of the floor of Parliament. And we'll get into that discussion in just a short while. Let me say hello to you guys, because I know that you're tuned in. Our audience on KTN, Karibu Sana, and folks who are tuned in this morning. Ndio Sisi Hapa says, we see you and good morning. Don Sabas Ndu, ask Dennis Okari what next after Gen Z political showdown on the Kenyan political landscape. I will ask him, but now how about we ask Dennis Aseto, because that's the Dennis that's here. How are you, Ndu and Aseto? We're fine. Robert Mbogo says good morning. Bosco Mutua says good morning as well. Tuning into the room this morning. Why tear gas? Surely Cyprian Kambuni is asking. Charles Harrison says good morning. James Kamau is also tuned in this morning from Fort in Texas, and he says Murkomen ought to resign. There's no way he can give shoot to kill orders. For goodness sake.
He doesn't even have that responsibility.
Does he even? I mean, is that within his mandate?
No.
Does he have that power?
He doesn't. Even the president does not have that power.
Let me breathe. Leo says, hello, Princess Aseto and Dennis. We'll greet him even if he's not here. No. According to what you're saying, so the narrative of 41 against 1 has been formulated, starting by a headline protest in Central and by KK minion assertion in their speeches in Parliament. Yes, indeed, we saw that. Atticus Now, good morning, you're saying to everybody. Good morning, guys. Good morning to you. Erica War is also tuned in. Good to have you in the room. Leo says, I beg your prince. My prince says, good morning, Spice. Good morning. A few weeks ago, Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei said, Murkomen should be sent to Gaza as our ambassador. He actually did say those words.
Yeah.
He actually did say that. Well, my prince is in agreement. Habari Leo Spice family, keep on bringing truth to power, Ubuntu. Good morning, Kimathi Nkrumah Makonnen. Good to have you in the room this morning. Christine Vulimo says, good morning, my people. Kavoy Alex is tuned in as well. Edgar Sanya says, good morning, Ndu Aseto. I'm getting you live from Kitengela. And you say today's proverb is when a sick man erects in a hospital bed, he should be discharged immediately. Okay.
Okay.
So
we heard you.
Paul Olola says that intro. Yes, indeed. Margaret Wanjohi says, good morning, all SpiceFM Situation Room from Houston, Texas. Let's continue the great conversations. Wapendwa, essentially. Yes, thank you so much. Matthew Kidara says, good morning, people. I was totally appalled with boss lady remarks in Parliament yesterday. Maraga has all the rights to protest. It's enshrined in the Constitution. Aluta continua. Kavoy says, Kenya itself is a play script. God help us. Young Jedi says, good morning, DND. We'll take it. I hope you're all well. We are. The utterances on the floor of Parliament yesterday, where you have to breathe in and breathe out. Dr. Venvik is tuned in this morning and says, good morning from Tudor. Onganyi Malala says, good morning, Ndu Dennis. You occasionally extend past 10 p.m. to bring thoughtful, mature conversations, and for that alone, kudos. Asante. Yeah, yesterday was one of those days when it was just necessary to continue the conversation because we were onto something, and we find that, we'll keep it when we need to. Bwangi Juma says, if you have done the right thing, you would be smiling, but because you have done evil, sin is crouching at your door. That's God's message to Cain. Good morning, guys, and blessed Friday. One to think about for sure. Henry Odero says, good morning, Spice, watching from Dar es Salaam. Always looking forward to the Situation Room. Thank you so much. Good morning, Double D and N. Chamgay from Nandi. Chamgay. Good, great team. I'm the only Gen Z tuning into Spice FM today from Baba Dogo. Are you, James? Good morning, tuned in from Hawaii, Eldoret.
Oh, yeah, there's a place called Hawaii in Eldoret.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. I was going to say what?
But
I've heard everything, but...
In Eldoret, they call it Hawaii.
Hawaii?
Hawaii, yeah.
How are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Zach OK is tuned in and says, Murkomen says media coordinated the Mandamano. Yeah. When the bush is on fire, the chameleon must abandon the walking style of its ancestors. This is true. It must. Machelle says, good morning, Aluta Continua. Lieutenant Gitonga is tuned in from Port Orchard in Washington. Kao Nyambura says, good morning. Kila mtu tunakupenda sana pia, my dear sister. Cyprian Kambuni says, 100 civilian injured, 15 dead, 300 police officers injured, according to CS Murkomen. Olo Odhiambo says, good morning, Spice. Jacqueline Onyango is tuned in this morning, tuned in from Oma Bay. Oma Bay. Sour. Jesse Chumo is also tuned in from Arlington in Texas and says, our leaders seem keen to do anything but their job. Newton says from Yakach, it's already turning out to be a beautiful day. Many tuned in this morning, getting round to you, and we keep saying hi to you as we do. And there'll be a lot of opportunities for us to talk one to the other as we get into things this morning. So let's do it by looking into the headlines. We'll start off in Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard. And the headlines today, death, destruction. In the name of protests, they were young, some barely out of childhood, with dreams yet to bloom. Now their families are preparing graves instead of graduations. Killed while protesting to honor fallen Gen Z heroes, they have become the latest victims in a nation that slaughters its future. Before their blood even dries, Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen has doubled down, issuing a chilling shoot to kill order. And we'll say their names: 17-year-old Dennis Joguna, 24-year-old Victor Otieno. 15 is the number of protesters who activists say died in Wednesday's protests. Well, I don't know. But looking into headlines as we come back and look at the meat of these stories, one life is one life too many to lose to something like this.
Yeah.
Faith Kipyegon attempted to run the mile in under 4 minutes, as the first woman, rather, to run the mile under 4 minutes. She did a phenomenal job last night in Paris. She ran that mile in 4.06, the fastest time she's ever done it in. And if anything, it shows that she's inching closer and closer to the chance to do that.
Yeah.
If there are folks who hold the flag of Kenya high in honor, it's athletes, it's sportsmen and women. They do this unrelenting time after time. She tried, and this is interesting, she did not fail.
She did not.
She achieved something that, although it wasn't the result that she wanted and that the world wanted her to get, she showed that she's resilient, and she's given, and the commentator said yesterday something that has just been emblazoned in my mind, that she did something that is going to be a forever inspiration to many young girls who want to tie up their shoes and hit the track because they can.
Yeah, because she might not have hit the ultimate goal, but she beat her personal best. So she broke her own record, which is something to celebrate. You know?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And she's probably in the fittest of her time, and so she has an opportunity to keep clawing on those seconds.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Faith, and keep flying that flag high and keep doing what you do best. In other headlines, traders grapple with heavy losses amid destruction and looting spree. That still continued for some time. Traders lose millions to looters on a rampage. 15 dead, survivors nurse injuries after deadly protests. CA forced to restore TV signals as sportsmen sued over internet posts. We'll look into that as well. And dark humor is a thing, and one of these headlines stating that disillusioned youth find voice in dark humor. It's interesting because when we were younger, it would... when you have a difficult situation, to kind of diffuse it, you would run to humor to be able to do that, and that's still being played out here. All right, we'll continue looking into these stories. We'll look into the headlines of Nation.
The Daily Nation, and still it's pretty much almost the same as the Standard, but here we're talking about tears and losses. So as bystanders outside Naivas supermarket in Nyeri town yesterday, after it was broken into and looted during protests to mark the anniversary of June 25th, as well as in Nairobi, as business owners just wake up to the disaster that happened in their stalls, as well as an image of Ms. Agatha Kiragu during an interview at her home in Nyeri County. Her son Joseph Ndonga was allegedly shot by police in Okoh town during Wednesday's protest. We continue to record loss of individuals, 15, and many others who are in hospital, including 300 police officers, according to CS Murkomen. And junior school facing severe teacher shortage. Public learning institutions are grappling with the shortage of teachers that stands at 98,461. You know, when we talk about matters to do with education, especially when it comes to staffing, one knew exactly the deficit that we have, and we hoped that they would have fixed this by now. But it is an ending story, an ending disaster that students, parents continue to stare at, and people ask, what's the status of education in this country? Why are we not taking care of the most vulnerable in the society? Yeah. And MPs adopt 415 billion shillings revenue sharing plan that is for the counties. As we proceed, just images of the aftermath of the protest across the country. And other headlines: tears, losses as families thrown into mourning, and families mourn kin killed in demos. We have Abdi Kani Dulo, who was shot in Thika, Victor Tieno, a college student in Thika as well, Fred Wanyonyi, a guard at Steamer Plaza, Nairobi, Ian Opango, 17-year-old, killed in Rongai, and David Wangi was shot dead in Embakasi, and many others. Yes, so those are the stories all the way to page 7, just covering what happened in the aftermath of the protests. Yes.
Okay, well, on the front page of the Star this morning, chaos aftermath, deaths rise to 15. Tears, screams echo in the corridors of City Mortuary. Unfortunately, these are the pictures that we're having to see again. Siasa, thin line divides credible service and rogue force. Raila and Ruto allies. Gachagua using Gen Z to overthrow the state. We saw from Parliament yesterday that his name was called very many times in Parliament from the leader of the majority and the leader of the minority. And they said, you know, this is him. Because the other places where protests took place, we didn't see the looting and the goonerism, essentially. So the cries came out that essentially these protests then have been turned political in terms of now saying that the protest was not about memorializing those who lost their lives a year ago, and neither was it about the search for good and better governance, but that now it was all about politics. And I think that's where the anger or the angst came from, because, you know, you're belittling this thing, and it was not. It's not about that. But unfortunately, we see this now being turned in another direction from where things actually are. It comes to our lest we forget conversation that we'll be having with Kabando when we come back from this break. But just looking at the headlines and looking into some of those stories that we'll be able to highlight through it. Just looking at a comment here from one of us this morning, who's Creedy, who says, I lost my friend and brother through a police bullet And this is the reality of our times. Big condolences to you, brother. And there's really nothing you can say that takes away the sting of loss by death, and especially in this manner. But as the one finger cannot wash the face, in times like this, the fingers come together to do a good deed, and we band together for people. True. We band together for people, as we must. We are going to now get into a conversation, because it basically wraps up what we are talking about in our headlines this morning. And as we do, Kabando Wakabando joins us on the line this morning as we get into Lest We Forget. Hello, Kabando. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you doing today?
We are doing good. We thank God for that.
Karibu Sana, getting into our conversation that we do this Friday, on Friday mornings. We do it today after a couple of days when things escalated. And we did have a conversation last week anticipating that, there would be a time where Kenya's people would then be able to protest. But unfortunately, the protests that we saw on Wednesday were marred by a number of things. They were marred again by destruction of looting and destruction of businesses that people have to then again lose. And this is married with the protest that was taking place, which unfortunately was discolored by this, and then also marred again by death, marred again by violence, marred again by injury, and then people are crying again in hospital. It's almost as though, Kabanda, we forgot the reason why these protests were taking place, and we want to get, first of all, a bit of a feeling around what you are seeing the situation is currently.
Thank you again, SpiceFM, for having me online. What is happening is evidently intentional, because the government, through the Interior Ministry and the Police Department, the National Police Service, had indicated clearly days before and the hours before Wednesday, 25th of June, that they would provide the logistical support to ensure that all the protesters were secured, and that, they had received all the notifications showing the intention of the protest. But on the onset, of course, many did not believe that it will be all smooth going. And predictably, the provocations came from the police. It was shown, and this is not in context, that the protesters did not provoke, and that the disruptions and the irritations came from police once again. And this a loud statement of impunity, that things cannot change, they are beyond change. There is institutional decay within the security apparatus, but one needs to also understand that all these departments of governance, the agencies of governance, they act on instructions, on guidance, and they comply with orders of seniors, and specifically the political leadership from the presidency, where the Interior Ministry, that is the Home Ministry of all the security and the governance agencies, is domiciled. We saw the blockage on Deka Road. We saw the blockage on Langata Road, on Kiabu Road, on Wayakiwe, on Mombasa Road. And yet, even in the far-flung sub-counties, we had seen the notifications that people would be assembling in commemoration, in this first anniversary, in remembrance and celebration of the gallant Jezis fallen through gunshots that were massacred last year. So, as it is now, clearly, the president has lost grip. And if there was any indication that the president has lost grip, the statement that he gave the same day as he was making speeches at the coast in Kilifi. And then yesterday's statement, very, very, very incompetent, very irresponsible, very insensitive statement from the very man appointed to be in charge of Interior, Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen. Even giving orders like, anybody near a police station, not somebody attacking a police station, telling the police, if you see anybody near there, and they're seeming to even indicate that they don't understand. They are completely clueless. They are rudderless. They are aimless. Because he said yesterday that the protesters in Nairobi were ferried from certain counties, including my home county of Nyeri. And now the question is, since there were protests even in my sub-county of Okoh, up to late in the evening, there was no violent incidences. There were protests in Trans Nzoia, in Kakamega, in Kisii, in Mombasa. We had over half of the country, 26 counties and forward, prominently broadcast and publicized, having held very peaceful demonstrations, the manos in those non-violent counties. Were those also ferried from other counties to Trans Nzoia, to Kakamega, to Mombasa, to even Eldoret itself? So when these statements are made, it is very, 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 very disappointing. It is worrisome because what was expected, the minimum basic expectation by the people of Kenya was taking accountability. Of course, it is good to also admit that there was misadventure here and there where, there was looting. But then you ask, in Nyeri, there was looting at a supermarket. But some protesters wanted to also attack another supermarket owned by an incumbent member of parliament, but they could not access because it was really well secured by the security forces. The other one was exposed, and it's like, it was let to be attacked. We are not saying that those who did that did well. There should not be any level of violence. There should not be any crime in this protest. And of course, we know elements. We have organized demonstrations before, even when we are in school, and they are always sometimes infiltrated by criminal elements, and there will be a stone throwing here and there and all that. But if you are well organized, you will, of course, overwhelm the gangs and the goons. And we saw that being done initially in Nairobi. But in other areas in Nairobi, we saw the police refusing even to protect a single person being attacked by a group that was openly being given instructions around a police Ladi cruiser. 20 policemen, 20 goons, one person being attacked, and the bystander or somebody walking by. So we have lost total grip. The nation has witnessed the president, Ruto himself, failing directly as a person and also through his Interior Cabinet Secretary. But then we ask ourselves, let's forget what has happened before. We have seen these incidences, only now it is escalated to the level where it appears now it's unmountable. Because we are not going to stem the tide against this government. These are hundreds of thousands, if you count now across the country, millions of people, largely young people, and you can see sections dominated by young ladies, females, and this means that the country is angry. The country is hungry. The country is impatient. The country is desperate, is disappointed, has given up. And since the country cannot be protected by those who are mandated and obliged to do so, then there cannot be another option. And the option is seeking redress through non-violent means. As we saw on Wednesday, they came to protest what happened last year. Instead of it now being moderated and secured properly, it has just deteriorated. So,
Kabando, I have to ask you at this point, because it's a difficult question to ask and not one in surrender, but folks started to mull, and I've seen a couple of comments even this morning asking that if every time then that there is a protest with the intention of it being a peaceful protest, if every time this happens, that then there's the infiltration of this criminality that happens. Because unfortunately, on Wednesday night, that there were women who were assaulted, there were women who were raped, there was destruction of property. There were people whose livelihoods then were diminished to within zero. And of course, this is not talking about the violence and the death that happened. But every time that there is this protest, which is using a constitutional right to send a message or to ask for certain things, that we have the infiltration of this. And it is very clear that people take advantage of this peaceful protests to then bring about this destruction, which unfortunately then is used as a tool to counter anything that would have happened as a result of these protests. And so people are asking the question, do people stop going to the streets? Because continually going to the streets to protest brings about this destruction, which people then use as a tool to say, look at what your peaceful protests are bringing.
Well, I don't think people will submit. Unfortunately, history has taught us that when governments become a rock and they cannot anymore stand for justice, democracy, non-violence, for the peaceful coexistence of the people, there isn't anywhere in the world where people pushed the edge, have submitted so that the rulers can win, so that the goons, so that the extrajudicial killings and abductions can be stopped by people submitting to allow the looting, the clear impunity, the abuse of the rule of law and the violation of the Constitution. We gave ourselves a Constitution in 2010. We even had a Constitution before that had still those rights, but now we have anchored it clearly. We cannot take away our Constitution so that Ruto and his political gang can reign supreme. And how it is no longer a question of Gen Zs alone. It's only that we Kenyans have allowed the young people to own this movement because they initiated it. They say they don't want to be dominated by any political party. They don't want to be dominated by any ethnic group. They don't want to be prejudiced. These are the children of Kenya. Clear, clean, with the vision and focused. So the question you have asked Odu is, do people stop going because of these crimes against humanity?
Yeah.
The rapings that have happened, the killings that have happened, the maiming that have happened, the irresponsibility in the lootings by those criminal elements. People will not stop. And actually, even us who are not now, been involved in this, people, you talk to everyone because we all talk. Do this media and the other media in the houses, we talk wherever we go. And everyone, except those who are enjoying the trappings of power, except those who are captives of the regime looting, except those who are surrogates of the government today, and therefore giving and voicing messages that will be in support of what the government is doing. Everyone else is saying something has to give. something has to change.
Kabando, as you have this discussion on just the aftermath of the protest, it was to commemorate 60 lives that were lost last year. But here we're talking about an additional 15, so we're talking about 75 and still counting. But even while at it, you hear the conversation that is ongoing now, and it has been reduced to Gachagua versus government matter instead of listening to the cry, hue and cry that is being raised by the young people, the demonstrators out there. And even when you talk about the notification that was given to the police, because they acknowledged that a notification was given to them and they would be there to offer security, one would have hoped that there would have been a discussion on the route plan, how the security would be provided to these demonstrators. But instead of that, what we saw is early morning, roads were blocked, Kenyans could not access the CBD, and one asks, why not even give a notification on the roads that will be blocked, and why you are blocking roads so that citizens don't access do not access the city? Then again, even as we have this discussion, why aren't we just listening to what is being said and act on the concerns Kenyans are raising instead of turning these into a political banter?
You see, first, to start assigning responsibility of this national protest to any political party, to any political figure, or to any ethnic group or any region, would just be showing how myopic and how senseless and stupid people could be. Because the opposite of being stupid is to being sober, to show concern and understanding. The question you ask is simply to government, not to citizens, because, as I said, we saw various notifications given. We had a police spokesman, both the regional, county, and from the national police service headquarters, giving assurances of providing security. But instead of providing security, in the morning, we saw roads being blocked. We saw multitudes of peaceful, non-violent individuals, mass walked into CBD, which was the epicenter of the demonstrations, being blocked. So who contravened the law? Who did the violation? It was obviously, and is obviously, those who blocked the peaceful protest, who provoked you. So just at the very center of central business district in Nairobi, tear gas is being thrown at individuals who are just possessing flags, water, bottles of water, and, we saw completely unarmed and peaceable marking. Did you see the parents and the families of Gen Zs who were killed last year? They had assembled very, very nicely in a group, those elderly parents, the grandmothers, the siblings, the other relatives, to go and lay rest outside Parliament, to lay their flowers to commemorate their loved ones. They were blocked the whole day. Would have expected that they would have been escorted, allowed to lay their flowers, would have seen that as a celebration, and perhaps even the mass uprising would have terminated earlier in the day because there would have been that satisfaction. But let me add another thing. As much as we want to blame the person where the buck stops, the person who carries the highest responsibility is the President of the Republic of Kenya, who is supposed to be the symbol of national unity and our sovereignty. But let us now also ask those individuals who belong to the opposition, those people we worked with, and they were running against this regime, who have been compromised, they have joined this regime. Why have they joined this regime? If you scrutinize clearly, a huge number of them have integrity issues, either in the ministries they presided before, the counties they presided before. We have seen even statements coming from Okoh, the central organization of trade unions in Kenya. Just like the way the Secretary General was praising the previous regime, and the previous regime and the previous regime, all throughout succumbing and being a surrogate of the ruling party. You know, where you are supposed to have institutions, trade unions, where you are supposed to have individuals, political figures, giving support, including the one who was our candidate against William Ruto. The same day is now telling us we should wait for 2027, we should not have a demonstration. Yet, you have lived a life that is pro-activity, a life that is loudly against dictatorship. But now you are sitting on the table of national eating. You can demolish and you can demonize everyone else who is doing things that you yourself have done for over 6-7 decades. So we should, as a country, ask ourselves the integrity of leadership that is lacking, or the deficiency of leadership responsibility and the political morality. Leadership ethics is one cause, because the president is feeling secured by not only his party, which is now a cacophonous, which is now in a mess, is feeling secured by the opposition numbers. We saw the statement being given by certain governors to say they are thanking their counties, they did not come to protest, they did not come. The protest was about people who are killed. You are thanking your county. The previous night spent a lot of time maybe compromising young people who had organized themselves, or sometimes even threatening them. And now you are saying we shouldn't celebrate Mashujaa Gen Zs, our children, who were massacred on June 24th, 25th last year. So we should even demolish Mashujaa in Kenya to say that those who fought for independence in Kenya should be not celebrated. Maybe you should say even Wangari Maathai did a mistake for starting out for Uhuru Park at the Karura and for environmental protection in the Republic of Kenya.
Why do you say this? Because I'm thinking that as you're saying this, as it's connecting and saying, like, why should we celebrate the heroes who made such a sacrifice? Is it because it seems as though we're turning around and spitting in the face of that sacrifice?
Yeah, because I'm saying the very fact that we have political leaders in this country, senior and elderly, we have prominent political leaders who are in the formations that would be oversighting this government, now in government, and giving support, play support. And as I said, and I dare repeat, that most of these individuals, including the leadership in the court, including those people who left as me went to the cabinet, including the politicians who are supposed to be in the coalition that should be oversighting, they are involved, and people know this.
I have to ask though, Kabando, because look at where we've gone in a very short period of time, and I'm talking about hours, that people came out to continue a protest about certain things, but at the same time to memorialize those who died when the first protest took place. But look at where the conversation has gone now. So I have to ask that then, was it intentional? That because now we are talking about the deputy president mentioned that this is the worst death and destruction that Kenya has ever experienced. The CS likened this to terrorism.
Yeah.
And in Parliament, members of Parliament, in the names of the leader of the majority and the minority, said that this is a political thing, that these were not protests, that somebody came in and planned for this to happen. And then the whole idea of asking for better governance, which is what was the original thing, then loses its potency. Was it planned from the very beginning that that's what was going to do, to diffuse this issue? Because now what are we talking about? We are talking about the sentiments made by the CS as insensitive, the expressions as insensitive, and we are saying that they just don't get it. And we're having a different conversation now, as opposed to pushing for what people were pushing for in the first place. Was it intentional?
Fortunately, the criticisms that are being made of the government reactions and the responses by the security apparatus to the peaceful demonstrations, to the non-violent protests, the uprising against extrajudicial killings and abductions, are perfectly in order, because they are only accumulating the moral decay of the incumbent government. And by the way, the claims that certain other individuals were involved, we have seen them trying to even say that these protests come from the Kikuyu community. That's what they are saying. Let's say how it is being said. Kipchumba Murkomen and therefore William Ruto are trying to depict this national uprising against impunity, against misgovernance, against incompetence, against looting, against extrajudicial killings, against abductions, as an isolated Kikuyu community uprising, even when these demonstrations are national. What they are doing today, they are doing exactly what the colonial government did. During the colonial time, as repression escalated in Kenya, the colonial government even gave a special card to people of the Mount Kenya area, the Kikuyu, the Ebu, and the Bere. And as if some of these people who are criticizing the Gen Zs have said in their political rallies before, even demonizing this community, so that the rest of the country can be mobilized against the Kikuyu, the Ebu, and the Meru people. But this will be an attempt in vain. We saw it in 1990 when Charles Rubia and Kenneth Matiba and Raila himself were arrested by the Moi government and were put in detention. The Kikuyu community was accused, even inside the parliament, as being the one that is against the then president. And then there was also an accusations that there were foreign powers that were backing Kenya in order to have regime change. Yet there was a continental movement, even a global movement, on the fall of the Eastern and the Western Europe barricades, particularly the reunification of Germany and what was happening between the US and the USSR, Russia. So this is an attempt to isolate, to escape responsibility. It will not win. It will not happen. The Gen Z movement so far and going forward, the way we see it, will be uncompromised. It will be bold. It will be fearless. It will be national. And now the Gen Z voted. We want the next time there will be a national protest, that there be pronouncement clearly from those who have been bringing themselves voluntarily, because they have seen it's mostly mobilized digitally, online. There are no secret meetings that have been invited. And you know how? It is such an abuse for anyone, instead of taking responsibility and accepting guilt, to say that these are individuals who have been mobilized, who are being furthered, and to blame Rigathi Gachagua, the leader of DCP, former deputy president, as being the one in charge. They are just running again to corner this issue to Mount Kenya, to Murang'a, to Nyeri, to Meru, those counties around the Mount Kenya. So what I can say is, it is in vain. It will not succeed.
And Kabando, with the statements that are given yesterday, especially by the Minister for Interior, should Kenyans take that as a government position?
Yes, that is the government position. You saw how he behaved for a cabinet secretary. You know how he moved there, even to certain scenes around there, some looting centers with the IDs distribution there. Like people went to loot, and then hundreds of them produced the IDs, put them in one basket, and then left and all that. It's so shoutage. It's very, very, very. It's outrageous. And because Kipchumba Murkomen, by the way, I was in Parliament with him 2013 to 2017 when he was still senator, and then I was a member of National Assembly. He is one of the closest and most trusted allies of William Ruto beyond the cabinet. When Kipchumba Murkomen speaks, that is the voice of William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya. And therefore, what we are seeing today is the President of Kenya, whose state minister, the minister for interior, the CS in charge of the security of this country, making statements that are ethnically profiling, that are backpassing. The buck stops at his desk, yet he's backpassing. And when the highest drone, to whom much and highest responsibility is assigned, shows irresponsibility, then you know the country has gone to the dogs. You know that the president has lost total grip. And instead of people now being quietened, people being calmed, people are more angrier, people are more charged, they are more infuriated, and they know that their destiny, their security, their safety, and their progress cannot be guarded by the incumbent government, and specifically President William Ruto. We saw even the deputy president appointed, Kindiki, last evening, putting his hands in the pockets, blaming the church. You know, the media was closed, particularly the Standard Group was the first target, and you have been doing very great job in your bold headlines and very objective content. You are now battling. Ruto is battling the media. Is battling the church. Has battled the region that gave him 47% of the votes, presidential votes in 2022. He is fighting the youth. He is fighting everyone. He is now denying us everything. The only thing that he is now almost appropriating and securing against the citizens is oxygen that has been given by Almighty God.
I hear you, Commando, and I'm. It's painting a picture for which then the eternal vigilance of Kenyans needs to be ramped up significantly, and for us to continue having these conversations, like I always say, is then very important. Thank you for your insights this morning, as usual, and that we cannot forget some of these issues. Kabando Wakabando, reminding us lest we forget. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and all the best. Let's keep moving forward.
Indeed, asante sana. Good morning at 7:03. Time for the news.
Good morning. This is the Newswire. I'm Edwin Lisamira. President William Ruto on Thursday signed the Finance Bill 2025 into law, introducing changes in tax administration aimed at increasing government revenue as the country grapples with mounting public debt and economic pressures. The new measures, many of them set to take effect on July 1st, have minimal implications in terms of hiking taxes, as the government tried to avoid pushback from Kenyans witnessed last year when it proposed punitive tax measures but later withdrew the bill following Gen Z protests.
Your Excellency, the third bill to receive your assent will be the Finance Bill 2025, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2025. The bill honors Your Excellency's commitment to the nation that there will be no new taxes in this financial year. The bill sets out fiscal interventions designed to enhance the business environment and reform the tax regime, making Kenya a more competitive nation to invest in.
The fate of embattled Isiolo Governor Abdi Guyo now lies with the Senate after its impeachment on Thursday. Senate Speaker Amason Kingi is expected to set up Guyo's trial with senators as the jury after 16 out of 18 members of the Isiolo County Assembly voted to impeach the governor. The MCAs are accusing the governor of gross misconduct, abuse of office and violation of the country's laws, including the Constitution. In a strongly worded response, the besieged governor dismissed the impeachment, declaring it as null and void, insisting that the process was flawed and failed to meet legal standards. Foreign Affairs and Prime CS Musalia Mudavadi has defended the government's response to Wednesday's protest, telling members of the diplomatic corps that while the right to protest is enshrined in the Constitution, it must be exercised within the bounds of the law. In a post-demo briefing, Mudavadi said the commemorative protest held to honor victims of the 2024 anti-finance bill demonstrations had degenerated into widespread violence, looting and destruction of property, including attacks on public infrastructure and law enforcement facilities. He reiterated that Article 37 of the Constitution grants Kenyans the right to assemble and demonstrate peacefully, but emphasized that this right comes with responsibilities. For his part, Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen announced that more than 10 people were killed and 400 others, including police officers, injured during the protest, which he described as terrorism disguised as dissent. Murkomen decried widespread vandalism and looting witnessed during the protest, saying the government will ensure that the perpetrators are prosecuted.
No person will be spared regardless of their political or financial status. I know it's been promised before that every time such violence is meted on citizens in the name of protesting, promises have been made before that criminals will be charged. I want to say, for avoidance of doubt, that the Inspector General of Police will follow the Constitution to the letter, and all these criminals will be arrested and investigated, including the financiers, including the vehicles that were bringing money in the name of protest, giving money to protesters in different corners of Nairobi, especially in Mwindibungu Street.
Iran's supreme leader has insisted the U.S. gained no achievements from strikes on its nuclear facilities in his first public address since a ceasefire with Israel was agreed on Tuesday. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said the strikes did not accomplish anything significant to disrupt Iran's nuclear program and described the retaliation against an American airbase in Qatar as dealing a heavy blow. It came as Washington doubled down on its assessment that the strikes had severely undermined Iran's nuclear ambitions. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said intelligence gathered by the U.S. and Israel indicated the operation significantly damaged the nuclear program, setting it back by years. That's the news wire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
All right, let's take a look. What's happening with traffic this morning? Right about now, we have some traffic, as it usually does, starting to build right around Magadi Road, heading out towards Langata Road, but just a smidgen of that, so it's not going to be too terrible. Let's take a look at the Thika Superhighway, where traffic was starting to build. Coming in from the Roiro interchange, you're going to have a little bit of traffic as you approach Kasarani Mweki Road, but that's going to open up as you then get on towards the Thika Superhighway proper, and then survey. It is now bumper to bumper all the way through towards the Pangani underpass. There is traffic on Kiambu Road, but looking at your northern bypass coming in through that area, not much. However, there is some traffic in Kiambu, and some of that is going out towards Kiambu Mall and then coming out through towards Kiambu Road at the very top. They're moving significantly north. All right, then as you come in from Waiyaki Way, there is some traffic starting to build. James Gishiro doesn't look too bad now, and over the drift will be okay. Ngong Road also looking good. The nexus between Kikuyu Road and Naivasha Road, and then getting out towards Ngong Road and Naivasha Road itself, there is some traffic there, so that's starting to build. We're getting into it this morning. Let's talk SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room. At 9 minutes after 7 o'clock, good morning and welcome to Friday. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, and we're getting into the tail end of conversations for this week around about issues that have been happening in the country, and also conversations around things that have been happening in the world, necessary for us to do so. That's why we do it on Kenya's biggest conversation. Our YouTube live streams are up. They're also up on Facebook and on X, and our audience is here on KTN. Back on air and in the country as well as the region. It's the situation to the world. Are you passionate about creating a better Kenya? Is the I&M Foundation. It's a social investment arm of the I&M Bank Group. And for the past 5 years, the I&M Foundation has been making a real difference, investing a significant 2% of the bank's annual profit. It's the highest commitment in the Kenyan banking sector so far, with an eye onto impactful programs. The work focuses on vital areas like education and skills development, economic empowerment, and enabling giving. But today, we want to highlight their leadership in environmental conservation. The I&M Foundation is dedicated to protecting our precious natural heritage through strategic partnerships and community-driven initiatives, ensuring a sustainable future for all. They believe in impact, and are achieving it through focused action. As we renew our pact to keep impacting, learn more about the I&M Foundation's vital work and how you can potentially collaborate by visiting imbankgroup.com/foundation to learn more. Powered by I&M Bank.
And in these economic times, especially here in the country, everybody just wants to be listened to, and I&M says that it is listening to you. Now, when you voiced concerns over bank to M-Pesa charges, they heard you and waived them. When you struggled with short-term loans, they heard you and introduced a flexible 90-day option right on your phone. They're listening and they're responding because your financial well-being is I&M's priority. Experience a bank that's on your side. Open your individual or solo biz account today via the I&M Bank on the Go app.
Fantastic, and you can definitely get into that and find out how you can actually contribute towards this impact, even if it's by thinking, sharing ideas, etc. It has been a heavy month. If you want to look at it, it's been a heavy year, hasn't it? It's been heaviness upon heaviness piled, and sometimes you wonder, how do you then get through it? And why we can talk about the politics of our times, and where we can talk about governance and the things that we are seeing play out. Sometimes you're not really sure how the mind operates, and the manifestation of some of those things then forms the basis for our Healthy Friday conversation today. Dr. Samuel Murage is an expert trainer and communication coach with the DTI Group, and we're talking this morning about grief, rage, and resilience, why emotional intelligence matters. Dr. Murage, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
Things have been hot, and we're getting into the place where we're going to start asking questions. How do we as human beings deal with these issues? Because they are, everywhere you look, there is anger. I mean, I look in the streets, there is anger. I look in Parliament, there's anger. I look in comment sections of programs. I look at social media, and everybody is carrying something that's very, very difficult. And that may then fuel the decisions that we make, how we speak to people, how we deal with other human beings. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's heavy, but we're going to do it anyway because it's necessary to do. But before we get into it proper, let's have you interpret a proverb that Dennis is going to share from Ethiopia. And we'd like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, Dr. is smiling, but Dr. we are in East Africa, and we talk about Ethiopia being a country that has never been colonized. They really fought the Italians in 1896. But when you talk about their coffee, Kenyans and Ethiopians always struggle who has the best coffee, and it just doesn't end there, because when it comes to our long distance runners as well, who is the best? We're always fighting to ensure that we have more gold and perform better, especially during Olympics. Again, Ethiopians believe that the Ark of the Covenant is in their country. In the Church of Our Lady of Mary, Zion, in that country. So if you want to perhaps just have a glimpse of the Ark of the Covenant, just next door. But our proverb today: no one washes their hands with only one finger. No one washes their hands with only one finger. How would you interpret that?
Thank you. A very good one. No man can succeed alone. No man is an island. You need other people to succeed in life. And basically that is what I would mean. You can never succeed in life alone. You need other people in your life so that you can be able to succeed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can't do it alone.
Yeah.
You know, it is also the spirit that built this country to what it is, the spirit of Harambee. Everyone coming together, chipping in. That's why the schools that we enjoy today is as a result of Harambee.
There you go.
You know,
very, very true.
Yeah.
I think it's apt that we have this conversation on a Healthy Friday discussion this morning, especially in the light of the things that we've seen happening in the country. And sometimes we say, oh, those are soft issues. If you need help, you can go and find somebody on your own. And we don't need to make it a national conversation. But we do, Daktari, that the nation is suffering. And we're not just talking about that there is no money or that there are no resources or that there's poor governance. That we have individual units of people who are grieving, who are angry, and who are still resilient to make their point heard. And we see this and hear this by the utterances, and then furthermore by the actions that take place. There's a lot of grief because there's a lot of blood that has been shed. There's a lot of grief because there's a lot of destruction that has been meted. There's a lot of anger because I think people have not come to terms with exactly what the issue is. But I'm not the expert, you are. We want to have this conversation with you to try and understand what to do with this feeling that sometimes you can't explain, but that you want to get rid of. So the grief and the rage that is being felt by people today, how do we start to deconstruct that? How?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. As you said, is a very deep conversation. Looking at currently what is happening, I'm just going through what you've shared here, tears and losses. Of course, when we are talking about grief, rage, and resilience, this sometimes happens when real life issues touch us as individuals, either as a family, either maybe in a business, or probably out of what maybe has caused one or things either to happen, and of course touches our hearts. When I got this issue, it reminded me of the very first time I lost a very close friend. I would say she's a friend because she was my mom. At that point, I was very, very young, quite young. And at that point, maybe I could not have been able to understand what grieving means. Or of course, thereafter, losing a dad, a parent as well, not very easy. Also, at that particular time, I was a bit older, getting to understand that there are things that happens in life. Of course, when we don't see it, and we don't dig in deeper into it, we might not be able to understand what is underground. So when we're having this conversation, maybe looking at what you call the iceberg model. The iceberg model is where we are looking at things that are happening at the top, but then what are the deeper things that are happening? So we are looking at the 10%, which now we are able to see people becoming angry, but of course looking at where are these issues coming from, the 90%, because 10% is where people are able to manifest the anger, they're able to show their frustrations, they're able to go out there and probably do what they're supposed to do, because 90% we cannot be able to know what could that be, not unless we have a very deep conversation about the same.
But Daktari, if we talk about the iceberg model, even as you look at it, it is a minute iceberg that you see on the top, but underneath is such a humongous bag that is down there. But if you look at our situation, it is anger that has manifested over time, and it is one that is being brought forth by fact that promises have been made, have not been kept. And individuals, I'll speak about Kenyans, have complained, they've raised their voices, they've tried to speak, but no one really wants to listen, hear what is being said and deal with that. Instead, what you find is, I am here, I am the big man, I don't care what it is you're saying, I am here and I'll do as I wish. Just how does that settle down with a people who are angry, and rightfully so? How do you deal with that if the person who's supposed to listen is not listening? Instead, they're belittling you.
And that's the reason why we are having a conversation about the iceberg model. Why? Because we are just seeing the 10%. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And there is a lot probably that could be underlying. And when we are looking at the 10% of people going out to either to demonstrate or maybe to manifest their anger, it is as a result of just what's correctly said, probably some promises that they feel they have never been fulfilled, or maybe they are looking at the expectations we've never been cut. But of course, looking at when you're talking about grief, it's I would say that it's very wide, because we are not just talking about people losing their loved ones. We have people who have lost businesses, and I know what it means when someone loses a business, because I've done that before. All right, where you work so hard, but then eventually, because of one or the other, you find that you've ended up losing that business. All right, so either could be like friends, but of course. At this point, I would just have that conversation about the 90%, because that is where basically the real issues are. Yeah.
So, it's what we seems that is happening at the moment is that there's a lot of underlying issues that have not come to the fore. And that for me, and where do we see that this is a manifestation? Especially if we want to liken it to what's happening in the country at the moment, where you do have peaceful protests, and there were people who are coming out to voice a certain thing, and that's coming from a place of anger. But we also see that same anger manifested when goons, paid or not, where goons come out from nowhere, where people want to then mete out violence on others. Look at all the things that we saw that happened on one night. Women were raped. There was shelter that was denied to people who couldn't find a place to sleep on Wednesday night. There were properties that were destroyed. There were people who were looted. Millions of shillings lost because people took advantage of a situation that was meant to go in one direction, but it went into the other. But these things are not being perpetuated by robots. These things are not being perpetuated by people who've come from another planet. They're human beings. So what is it that is happening inside people's hearts and minds that's getting us to the point whereby it really is really ugly to look at and experience? What's happening?
Just as probably we've seen it, they've correctly said, is about feeling that, for example, there are things that have not been fulfilled, and maybe we talk about the young people like Gen Z, for example. Addressing the issues that maybe are very close to their hearts, whether it's about employment, whether it's about the economic status of the country, whether it's about the businesses that needs to start, but they are unable to do that because of lack of capital. These issues, I believe that these are issues that, people can actually sit and have a real conversation about that, because it's not just about, living is about the purpose. Why are we here? Why do we exist? It is not just about what you do. It's about how you make other people feel. And I think it's very key to think about the legacy that you want to leave behind. So when you think about that way, and when it comes to the issues of having a conversation, is we are looking at in the next couple of years, like 10 years or 20 years, how do we want to be remembered as individuals or leaders, business leaders, government leaders, or maybe political leaders? How do we want to really be remembered? And I believe having a conversation, because not unless there is the acknowledgement, there are the issues that need to be addressed, then there can never be the way forward. So having a conversation about what are these issues that are making, maybe people get to stand and feel that either their expectations have been curtailed, or their expectations have not been met. So having that great conversation first, and that's where, when you're talking about healing, it starts when people acknowledge that yes, there is a problem and there are issues that needs to be discussed. And there can never be the way forward, or can never be the healing process, not unless, one, there is that acknowledgement, there are issues, and there are real issues that needs to be discussed.
What do we need to acknowledge? Sorry. What do we need to acknowledge? If I hurt you, or if you hurt me, if I said something to you, or if there's a national umbrella of a certain feeling, what do I need to acknowledge? And who needs to acknowledge it? Do I need to come to you and say, yes, Doc, you actually hurt me, or this is the feeling this is what I'm feeling? Who has to acknowledge before healing happens?
I think it's two-way. I believe it's two-way. When we're looking at if there must be a way forward, there must be the first step. And as I said, it's just like the way, because the discussion is about grieving, and rage and resilience. When we are looking at that, of course, we take people through the healing process. The very first step is basically the acknowledgement. All right, and as I said, I would say it's actually it's two-sided. Like, yes, there are issues, there are promises that have been made. What are some of these promises that have not been kept? Can there be a discussion about the same? All right, so that's the point that I'm talking about.
So let me paint a picture. Promises have been made, they've not been kept. I have raised concerns with regard to this is what you promised, but this is what you have delivered. I've already started the conversation with you. Instead, what I'm finding is an individual who's ready to kill, to maim, and disappear somebody. And even when we continue to now raise concerns on how you're handling the matter, still I'm being met with the deaf ears. At that point, where do I go to? For that conversation to happen, the other party has to be willing to come on the table. But what if the other party says, Jipange? How do you have that conversation if there is no even table to sit on, or chairs have gone?
Maybe probably there, in case there is no such, maybe the willingness for either parties to. And when I'm talking about either parties, is basically looking at what are the issues and what are the real issues that are affecting us as Kenyans at this particular time, And the agreement is looking at those who have been hurt, the people that we feel that probably have been hurt, and the people that feel that, yes, we feel like we are on the right track. So not unless there is that concessions about where do we move from where we are today. Because not unless there is such a conversation, these issues will always come, and they always be there. But of course, having the point of having a clear conversation about what can be discussed to start the healing process, I believe that will be very, very key. Because we are not looking at, the next 1 year. As I said, when it comes to the iceberg model, we are looking at the 90% of the issues which are underlying, and you put it very correctly. What are these 90% of the issues that the Kenyans feel that these are the issues, and the real issues that when these issues can be discussed, there could be, a way forward, and probably when there is that acknowledgement, these are the true issues, and this is where we are getting to have the way forward can actually be very easier, or maybe how to go about it.
How do we go about it? It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite difficult.
Because we're dealing with ugly things here. We're dealing with very many other. Death is not something that you want to have to deal with, especially you're dealing with the death of a loved one. I mean, I imagined the young boy. He's 17 years old. I don't know him. We don't know him, but we felt something when somebody who was not involved in any of this at all then loses his life. I don't know him, but something in me, I'm angry. that had to happen to him. And then I look at people who were in the city doing their business and their livelihoods. They wake up the next morning and they're at zero. I don't know them. But I'm angry and I'm saying that, why then do we need to have things like this? I don't know them. If I were to pass them in the street, I wouldn't know who they were. But I see things like that and I feel a certain kind of way. And I don't like it. And then I think about the women who've come out to, and the mothers and fathers who've come out to mourn their dead. I don't know them, but I'm angry and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And this is the feeling that people have over and over again, but it does something to you. That you wake up the next day or you get into the next minute where you have a little bit less than you did before. And this is the person that is mushrooming with others that's making up society today. This is who we're putting out. And we think that we can remove that person from the everyday, from the politics, from the governance, from the community. We think we can remove that feeling, but doesn't it bleed into everything that we do?
Yeah, correct. And I believe one of the things that probably we could be more aware of is also being a very emotionally intelligent, individuals, and connecting the three areas that we're talking about. Emotional intelligence, I believe, is very key, because yes, we feel we are really hurt, but then what's the way forward? We've lost our loved ones. What's the way forward? And I believe what we do is really what matters a lot. Why? Because when you're talking about emotional intelligence, is basically being able to understand our emotions, being able to read the mood, being able to regulate these emotions, and being able to manage emotions in such a way that we are not creating, we are basically responding in a more constructive way. So what I would say is that when we are talking about maybe, for example, like leadership, or we are talking about governance, the key aspect of emotional intelligence plays a very critical role, because it's about how you handle the issues that tells us whether you are an emotionally intelligent person or even not. And that's why we are talking about when things happens, getting to have an understanding about where these issues are coming from is basically being more aware, and looking at what we call the key competencies of emotional intelligence. One is about being self-aware. What are the issues? That's why the reason why we are talking about the 90%, we're talking about being self-aware. The awareness about what are the issues what are the underlying issues that need to be addressed. And of course now the self-management, whereby you are able now to manage these emotions. And that's the reason why I'm talking about could be two-way. Because yes, we are hurt, but then do we remain like that? There must be a way forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a break and look at the way forward. Because it feels nice. Misery loves company, isn't it? Sometimes you enjoy saying, "Oh, you're woe unto me," and this is a terrible situation, and we can. But then, how do we move to the next place? We'll come back from this break and discuss that. We're having a conversation this morning with Dr. Samuel Muraga, who is an expert trainer and communication coach. Our Healthy Friday conversation is around grief, rage, and resilience. Why emotional intelligence matters. How do you get there? We'll be back after this at 27 minutes to 8.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is not an announcement, it's a fact.
To plant trees and protect our environment.
To drive mentorship and education.
To grow businesses with funding and training.
To share with our communities.
Since 2020, we've honored this pact.
As we mark 5 years, we renew it, because all impact begins with a pact. I&M Foundation, celebrating 5 years of impact, powered by I&M.
Oh, great!
This
This June, the biggest Club World Cup ever held is here. The 2025 FIFA Club World Cup. Recharge your subscription on your current bouquet for 2 months and get upgraded free to the next high bouquet for 60 days. A competition across the continent. 30 action-packed days of top-notch football from 32 best club teams from around the world. Recharge your subscription today to never miss a moment of a competition like never before. On the move, download StarTimes on and watch every goal, every moment, anytime, anywhere. StarTimes Sports, beyond passion. StarTimes, enjoy digital life.
Provides the inspiration for Leipzig.
The weather with SpiceFM.
It's cloudy in Nairobi at 15 degrees. We'll see sunny conditions coming through. And at 13, sunny into Nakuru. It's 15 and sunny in Nyeri with 10 degrees and sunny in Eldoret. Mombasa sunny at 23, while we'll see sunny conditions through Friday in Malindi, currently at 25. It's sunny at 19 into Kisumu, while Kakamega at 16 is partly sunny. Partly sunny at 19 in Kampala, where it's sunny at 22 into Dar es Salaam. The weather in Johannesburg is on 0, mostly clear conditions. And Mogadishu is 26 and sunny, while Addis Ababa is sunny at 14. Lagos, light rain at 24. And it's mostly clear at 22 into Kinshasa. Mostly cloudy at 26 into Beijing. And at 19 degrees, it's cloudy in Paris. And 15 and cloudy in London. Cloudy at 19 in New York, going to highs of 22, back down to lows of 19.
Spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, we're not doing too badly as it normally is on a Friday. Traffic in and out of the city will get you going where you need to go real quick. We shouldn't see too much with that right about now. We'll also see that as you're coming into the city from the Eastern Bypass, that it'll take you through towards North Airport Road without an issue, at least not for now. Flowing smoothly coming out of off of Waiaki Way. And we also see a little bit of traffic then as you get into the city via Kiambu Road. As you're coming off of Mombasa Road, you're doing okay, at least for now, getting through and through. Let's keep an eye on things and attempt to keep it moving. SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
Our Healthy Friday conversation at 23 minutes to 8 o'clock continues with Dr. Muragi this morning. And we're looking at emotional intelligence. And you said, okay, so we can actually get there. You know, so how?
Basically, like, still having this conversation about, because I believe that having conversations about emotional intelligence, that's why we come in as experts in terms of equipping and empowering individuals to understand that when it comes to how you handle issues is having been able to build the capacity to do that. Mm-hmm. And the way you can be able to do it is basically getting to be more equipped in terms of how to handle issues. And as I said, being able to understand the 4 competencies of emotional intelligence is key for any leader, or maybe for individuals as well. For example, I just mentioned about the self-awareness is basically being able to read the mood. All right, being able to understand the challenges that the individuals are going through, or maybe the world, or sorry, the Kenyans are going through. There can never be the progress, as I said, without having that conversation. All right, and that is one of the key pillars that we really look into in terms of self-awareness. And I believe it's very good to always stand and reflect even as a leader, why are these issues coming up? And having a moment to reflect is key. As I said, it's part of being an emotionally intelligent person. Mm-hmm. Being able to understand, being able to read the mood, being able to adjust depending on what is basically happening. And the second competency is about the self-management, where you are able to regulate emotions, you know. And as I said, when you are looking at the depth of the issues that needs to be discussed, that triggers the negative emotions, being able to manage those emotions is very, very key.
Dr. The entire conversation around emotional intelligence is deeper, and it is one of the easiest ways of finding solutions to problems that arise.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, both aggrieved parties must be willing to set aside their difference, not forget them, but come on the table and discuss. But what happens when you deal with individuals who, first of all, don't know how to self-manage? You know, I'll give an example. Our parents who lost their loved ones have come to grieve with the fellow mourners, fellow parents, to lay wreath. But at that point, the individuals accused of killing their children lob tear gas. At that point, self-management has flown off the window. You find the statements being made after that, that even these women who came out are being called terrorists and and treasonous subjects. What happens if the other party cannot manage themselves and they still have problems and issues that have to be addressed? Where does one go to? How do we bring these two people on a table?
Yeah, I would say that could actually be a very difficult because, as I said, when it comes to having a conversation, it cannot be one way. It can always be two way, you know. And that is where the healing journey or having the ability to address the issues can always start. You know, being truest to yourself. And having that conversation is where I would say that it's where it can all start. All right, I wouldn't say this side or that side, but of course, as I said, being emotionally intelligent, individuals is where you've got to read the mood and understanding what are these issues that needs to be addressed. So it can't be two way. It can't be one way. It can always be two way.
Be two ways.
Yeah. So there must be the willingness for the aggrieved parties.
So how would you? Let me just put the country Kenya into that box. How then do we deal with the grief that the country feels, the anger that is in there, and the need for healing to happen? How would you, from an expert point, how should we approach this? How do we find healing?
Having maybe as just as you said, as an example, where you have someone who a parent who has lost a loved one, and a loved one is a result of maybe protest or what has been happening in one or the other, for example, and looking at how can that issue be addressed to the aggrieved person. You know, because it's how that issue is addressed that would really matter a lot. Yeah, that would really matter a lot.
So, the assumption is that there's only one aggrieved side, that there's one aggrieved party. But how do you then achieve this emotional intelligence when it's very clear that there are two aggrieved sides?
There can only be a solution if there is a willingness to have a conversation. That is what I said. The acknowledgement that the issues that needs to be addressed by the two aggrieved parties, and once there is that acknowledgement, then the issues of having the way forward really becomes easier, because it's about how and how the issues can be addressed becomes a bit easier. But of course, if there are issues where is only one party that feels is aggrieved, and there is no, there is no other party that is actually hurting or even hurt, that becomes a big problem. Becomes a big problem, and that's why for when it comes to leadership, I believe that the performance is based on how emotionally intelligent person is, because instead when it comes to performances, whether it's on leadership, whether it's on governance, it's contributed massively on how emotionally intelligent the person is.
It's interesting because I've just seen a comment because we can talk about this as individuals, whereby two individuals can have an issue, but we have to take this conversation to the national scale, whereby it is very clear that there are issues and they abound. And Marvelex says that we are in a toxic relationship where government is blaming everyone from the church to single individuals, and that there needs to be a turning point. That there is a toxic relationship at the moment where people are saying one thing, where others are aggrieved over another matter, where government may feel that this is not the direction in which we will be going, but it affects every single thing that we do. So are we saying that emotionally unintelligent individuals coming together, making up units, whether it's family, from there towards community then grows up into society then makes its way into the nation? If we don't have emotionally intelligent people, or who have not achieved emotional intelligence at some point to then be able to do a certain thing, that we then see the manifestation of that problem on the national scale likened to what we are seeing today. People are not able to talk to one another. Maybe they're able, but they're not willing to talk to one another. We are not willing to sort out issues. For God's sake, I'm not going to come to you and tell you that I was wrong, or that perhaps we should find an amicable solution to this thing. Are we fundamentally flawed? And is that what brings the problem?
I would say partly yes, and also partly in terms of how do we channel the issues that maybe we feel that maybe there are promises, for example, that were made and then they have not been fulfilled. How do we channel that? And you just said correctly, where, for example, one party feels that they have been aggrieved, the other party feels that we are good. We are good. Having that, starting that healing process can actually be very tough. It's not as easy. Where it's one-sided. If it's two-sided, then at least that can actually be a way out.
You see, it is difficult. I agree, but a solution has to be found at the end of the day. If you made promises you've not kept, and I've told you've not kept them, but still, even when people have died, it's your responsibility to protect them, and you have not, and I still raise it to you. You still don't care about it. And here we are talking about a toxic relationship that does exist. And you see, in toxic relationships, both parties don't want to talk to each other, but still there is need for solution for people to move forward. So in terms of which way Kenya, how do we move forward in this space that we find ourselves in? How do we heal the nation? What must both parties, both parties aggrieved. Government says wrong has been done to us. The citizenry says you have done wrong unto us. Then how do we come together? Because that's where rubber meets the road. Because everyone is a hardliner in this matter. How do we break all these barriers for us to speak?
Not unless if it's a hardline, not unless probably you soften your stand. And I just gave an example of when you're talking about grieving, of course, as I said, is huge. It's wide. All right. Having to admit there is a challenge, not unless you've got to a point whereby you admit that yes, there are issues that needs to be addressed. I don't think there could be any way forward, as far as I'm concerned. It's just like, for example, you've lost a loved one, and then you've not gotten through that process to really admit that yes, this has really happened. You'll not be able to start your healing process or even your healing journey. Yeah.
Is there hope for the country Kenya to heal?
I believe so.
What will it take?
I believe so. I believe so. I believe so. As we continue to have conversations from different, stakeholders, eventually I believe that could be the way forward. Because we are looking at the legacy. How do we want to be remembered? And that's the reason why we are talking about the hearing process is about how do we want to be remembered in the next 10 years, 20 years, all right, in the next 30 years. For those who are very young, they are looking at in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years. How do we want to be remembered? And I believe that there could be the way forward, or maybe probably there could be there could be a lot of hope. And I believe that if the citizens and those who are in the leadership can actually come to terms that there are issues that needs to be addressed, or maybe having to acknowledge that there are issues, the underlying issues that need to be addressed, I believe that could be the starting point.
Dr. What is a delayed healing process doing to the country? What is that doing?
That's the reason why there is that manifest of anger. And you see, that can also be very destructive at the same time. That's why when we are talking about emotional intelligence, it is having the ability to regulate the same. Because yes, you would feel we are really hurt, but then would it end up causing distractions? Or if it can actually be managed, can there be hope? Yes, there could be hope. And that's the reason why, if, for example, one has anger issues and those issues are not resolved, eventually what happens, it causes distractions at the same time.
So then is it okay for you to say, you know what, because I've heard this a couple of times over just the last few, I mean, even in the conversations and the ones that happen on the periphery, and for us then be able to put them on this platform and say, well, people say, well, let's just give peace a chance, let it be for peace. Can peace be that thing that you want to take, and so there's a mess over here, but you want to take peace kind of like a blanket and cover everything and say, okay, well, let's, for the sake of peace, let's just be quiet and let's not say anything anymore. Let's not go out into the street. Let's not protest. Let's just be quiet. Let's just do this for the sake of peace. Can you do that and cover up all the ugliness for the sake of peace? Is that healthy?
I would say that it will not be healthy. Why? Because we are not just looking at it's just like the way one would feel sick and then you go and just buy tablets just to cool the body without really necessarily looking at what's the root cause of the whole issues. If there could be the root causes that can actually be addressed, it becomes easier to come up with amicable solutions. Yeah, because if we just do things for the sake of doing it, for example, just as you said, we just create an environment where we are assuming that things are good, and probably they could not be good. What will happen the next couple of years? And that's the reason why when it comes to maybe like grieving, where giving an example, one has lost the loved one, and then they just don't want to show it. That they are not.
They're not okay.
They are not okay. People come and tell you, "Don't worry, be strong. Be strong for your kid. Be strong for your family." At the same time, back at the private room is where you go and really cry, because sometimes we cannot be able to see how you feel. But then you are the only one who knows how you actually feel it.
So there is a subject of the fact that if you look at the issues that are being raised by Kenyans is we want justice be done. We want corruption to come to an end. We want better governance. We want better economic situations for us. We want to be able to afford living in the country. Let's say those are our 5 demands. And this is part of our conversation to you. And you don't meet that. And the part of conversations that Kenyans are saying, we don't want any other conversation. This is exactly what we want you to do. If these things are implemented and are done as Kenyans say, Kenyans would be happy. But ostensibly you find these are things that are not being done. Why do you think that could be the case? Is it that the other party is tone deaf?
Probably because the rate comes in for what you call either humiliation or maybe expectations which have been met, which have not been met, and that's why this all comes up. as I said, is what you see is the 10%. The 90%, these are the underlying issues. You get the point? Yeah.
So how, and I think this is the thing,
yeah,
because we all seem to be in a bit of an artificial state at the moment, whereby there's walking on eggshells, there's artificial peace, there's artificial ceasefire. But those underlying issues, it's like, again, going back to the iceberg, what lies beneath is unbeknownst to many people, but it is there. You cannot deny its existence. And if you're in a pressure cooker situation, at some point, the lid is going to pop off. And we will get into situations that are much worse that we'll not then be able to handle, because all of this stems from what an individual has inside. How, and I'm still back on that, how do we make sure that this pressure cooker situation does not explode? How do you actually go to... I mean, I think about every single conflict situation in the world, and there had to have been a peace and reconciliation mechanism that was brought into place after that. It happened in Liberia, happened in Sierra Leone, it happened in South Africa, it happened in Rwanda, it happened in the former USSR countries that broke off, Serbia, Slovenia, all of those countries. It happened in Germany. There are countries where conflict are still happening today, which of course you will not have peace and reconciliation because there's still active conflicts. It's an example. But the peace and reconciliation aspect, one of the things that you talk about is the acknowledgement of the underlying issues that brought about these conflicts in the first place. Is it not something that you can preempt and say, look, we need to actually look at these things, otherwise we're hurtling into a much worse situation? And that brings about the emotional intelligence that you talk about, to be so tuned that if we don't deal with this thing, we will be in a deeper problem. And that's what, for me, it looks like emotional intelligence is saying. You have to be tuned to feel it, to understand it, to know that if I go in this direction, this will happen. If I don't, this will happen. How do we use this intelligence actually to bring about situations that are then for progression and not regression?
Yeah, and you've put it very, very correctly, because what doesn't pain you or hurt you, you cannot heal from it. All right? Not unless you get to a point whereby you've got to listen to the issues that, for example, he has mentioned about maybe unemployment, or maybe you mentioned quite a number of them.
Jailing the corrupt, unemployment, justice,
justice, all that. Not unless this you get to a point whereby the leaders are willing to have that conversation, even if you are to have, the reconciliation mechanism. Will not get to a place where we have that solution, because just examples of the countries that you've mentioned is where there is a willingness. As I say, this is the very first important step on acknowledging, yes, these are the issues that need to be addressed. That comes in when you've listened and you have reflected and you've seen this is what's happening, and we need to have a conversation and get to see these are the issues that need to be addressed. I believe that if that could be the starting point, it could actually make it easier to have a healing process. There is no reconciliation without first acknowledgement of the issues that need to be addressed. Yeah, because if there is the hard line on the aggrieved parties, then it means there can never be consensus under the same thing.
What would be, sitting at the periphery, what would be your suggestion or the way forward to both aggrieved parties?
I believe that looking at the past, I believe that the church has also played a very critical role in terms of initiating reconciliation in many countries. Why? Because of probably the trust that has been put in churches. And when I'm talking about churches, I'm talking about religious organizations, and having such to start off the conversations. I believe that could be a way. And I was also looking at, in the past, what are some of the strategies that have been used to start off such conversations. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's a long road. I think that the acknowledgement, one of the things that you talked about perhaps is the first step that a lot of folks have to go to acknowledge that there's an issue, and then to acknowledge that, certain things need to be done, and then to be accepting of it. And then to just be able to look and say, well, how are we going to apply these things? Conversations like this start us off in that direction to say that, well, look, if something's to be done, this is where to start. Dr. Samuel Murage is an expert trainer and communication coach with the DTI Group and has been our guest this hour. Starting off that conversation around, okay, what must we do to start to chip away at the ugliness that a lot of folks are feeling at the moment? Thank you for being here this morning. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much.
The hot seat continues. Good morning. It's 8 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Edwin Lisamira. Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has cancelled his 3-day tour of Embu County, citing Wednesday's nationwide protest in which 16 people died and more than 400 others sustained injuries. In a statement posted on X, Gachagua, who was to begin the tour today, said he'd taken the decision in solidarity with the young people who lost their lives and the business community who've lost billions of shillings due to what he described as the deafness of this rogue regime. Gachagua said he'd also stood down his media briefing with media houses in the Embu region. He further dismissed claims that he sponsored the protest, saying the government was scapegoating after failing to secure the protesters and prevent destruction of property by, in his words, state-sponsored goons. Gachagua was responding to a heated debate in the National Assembly where Sunni East MP Junet Mohammed rallied MPs' support to compel investigative agencies to probe him and his allies over Wednesday's unrest.
Colleagues of ours were used to mobilize people to come and demonstrate in Nairobi. We know Honorable Kakuya, Honorable Bejadong, Honorable Banzo in Mwote, all were mobilized to bring goons and people to Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that there is problem with this country, Mr. Speaker.
Order, members.
Tell you, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Take your seats.
The standards that has been set by Rigathi Gachagua in this country is that if you want to qualify to become a presidential candidate in his so-called opposition alliance, you must do as much demonstrations as you can. You must cause anarchy and you must do demonstrations.
Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has accused a section of religious leaders and the diplomatic community of fueling unrest. Speaking at Kambu Kibwezi Market in Makueni County, Kindiki claimed that calls on the young people to exercise their right to picket incited Wednesday's demonstrations.
There was another group of religious leaders that participated in inciting young people, telling them they have freedom to do whatever they want, the freedom to steal people's property, the freedom to beat up people, the freedom to burn police stations, the freedom to burn courtrooms, the freedom to rape women. And I want to ask those church leaders whether what we saw yesterday is what they were advocating for. Kuna pia mabalozi wa nchi mbalimbali ambazo ni marafiki wa Kenya ambao pia walichochea vijana wakiwaambia mko na uhuru wa kufanya lolote mtakavyo na msiweze kuingiliwa hata na polisi, fanyeni vile mtakavyo.
Kindiki further accused unnamed politicians of inciting the youth to violence and urged the young people to refrain from using social media to slander leaders.
Kuna wanasiasa vile vile ambao walichochea vijana badala ya kuzungumza na vijana na kuwapatia wasia mzuri. Naambia wenzangu, hiyo mambo mnasema ni mzuri, lakini tunaomba ya kwamba tusichome nchi yetu. Kwa sababu mtu unampiga ni Mkenya. Na kama umedhulumiwa, huyo mtu unapiga sio aliyokudhulumu. Hata kama kuna dhuluma, huyo unapiga na ule mama ama msichana amebakwa hana hatia. Mwenye duka ambao umeenda ukavunja na kuharibu hana hatia.
Businessman and politician Philip Nahashon Okoh will now serve as a state witness in a court case into the murder of Kasipul MP Ongondowere. Okoh, who was initially a key suspect in the case, secured his release after the Director of Criminal Investigations reviewed evidence. The High Court's decision marks a major turning point in a case that has already seen 3 people formally charged over the MP's murder. 29 children who are taking their school exams in the Central African Republic have been killed in a crash after a nearby explosion caused panic. The blast on the second day of the high school finals on Wednesday occurred at an electricity transformer. A hospital director from a local hospital said. President Faustin Achange has declared a period of national mourning. He has also ordered that the more than 280 who were wounded in the crash get free treatment in hospital. That's the news wire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
.5 Spice FM Kisumu.
Waliletea fujo Moi mpaka wakapata cooperation. Wakakuja wakasumbua Kibaki mpaka wakachukua nusu mkate. Wamekuja wakazungusha Uhuru hapo mpaka wakaenda na handshake, program yetu ikapotea, BBI ikaendelea, tukazama, tukaingia kwa madeni. Sasa mimi nimewaambia, hii serikali mimi nawaambia hii serikali ni ya mahasla. Hakuna nusu mkate, hakuna handshake, hakuna hiyo borojo.
Jana nimeona wale wazee tulishinda. Ati hiyo mzee akisema ati he'll not be coerced or intimidated to joining our government. Wewe mzee sikia. We have no business within our government. Hatuna haja na hatugojei wewe. We are not looking for you and we have no time. Stop saying that people can force you to come to this government. Forget about being forced or coerced. We are not interested because sisi tuko na kazi ya kufanya.
Kama kuna mtu ako na namba ya William Ruto, arekodi hii video mtumie. Maisha yangu tangu nizaliwe sijawahi kuona mtu muongo, mfisadi, baradhuli na mdhabina kama William Samoei Ruto.
Mimi Hassan Joho nikitaka kuongea, mimi I don't even dream of engaging with them. Ati huyu akitaka aje aongee sio na mimi niongee na Ruto nini? Mimi nikamtafute atanipa nini? Wilbaro. I wonder. Nilipeleka Wilbaro mimi la kimtaani la kucheza nalo zamani.
We have a choice to reject over 60% of these names or give President Ruto his skunk. Apart from a few individuals who are not even more than 8, the rest are incompetent, unqualified, have integrity issues, are people who cannot deliver this country from where it is to the next level that we want the country to move in.
A few moments later.
Now forwarded the name of John Mbadi Ngongo to the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning. The Honorable Hassan Ali Joho, Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs.
Nguruwe ujiganga na mafuta yako.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Traffic.
All right, Friday morning, traffic is not too crazy. Let's take a look at our one of the focal points on the Thika Superhighway coming into the city. We'll not see too much of that traffic as you get into it this morning. Jogo Road going then towards Landis has some traffic because Landis Road, as you then get into the city via Haile Selassie, is busy at this point. There is some traffic coming off of Ngong Road. We're going to keep an eye on that, but it is not, again, too crazy as you're trying to get into the city. All right, what else are we looking at? as you come in through towards the Globe Cinema roundabout, there's some traffic. Some of it will go coming off of Muranga Road and then into or onto Moy Avenue. But that's just about the size of it. Mombasa Road is looking good as you get into the city. And also, as you come off of Langata Road, not too much traffic here. There is a smidgen of traffic as you come out of South Sea, then touching on Mombasa Road, but I think we'll be fine for the most of it. The Eastern Bypass, let's take a look. A little bit of traffic forming as you get towards North Airport Road. And then also, as you then approach Cabanas at the interchange, there is some traffic on Outer Ring here and there, but all in stride. Good people, let's talk and keep things moving this Friday. SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Very good morning to you at 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room on this Friday. The last conversation as we get into the end of this week and really, truly into the end of June. So it's a good time to ask you that question about whether you're passionate about Kenya and whether you're passionate about a sustainable future for Kenya. Well, if you are, you're not the only one, because the I&M Foundation is passionate about making things work and making them work better. The I&M Bank has put together and has been putting together every year for the last 5 years 2% of its profits, which is one of the largest in the Kenyan banking sector, towards sustainable programs. And one of those is environmental conservation and making sure that natural heritages are secured, and through other areas like education and responsible giving and things like that, but then keeping that front and center. And there are ways in which you can collaborate. There are ideas that you would like to share. What you need to do is go to the I&M Bank site. It's inmbankgroup.com/foundation. Find out how you can collaborate for more and more impact. And this is all powered by I&M Bank.
And are you trying to save but find it hard to start? And what about when you need to buy something today? Well, I&M Banks has you covered. Achieve your dreams with a Fikisha Gold Savings Account, the easy digital way to save for what matters most. And for your immediate needs, use I&M's Buy Now, Pay Later. Purchase items from your favorite stores now and pay in affordable installments. Buy now, pay later. And I&M says, save tomorrow while living comfortably today. Get started now. Open your individual or solo biz account today via the I&M Bank on the Go app.
There it is. And we're getting into a conversation this hour, and two gentlemen sitting in the hot seats of the Situation Room. The Senator in the Republic of Kenya from Makueni County is Dan Manzo.
Yes.
I've been taught, and I'm a good student. He's here with us this morning. Suba Churchill is the Executive Director of the National Civil Society Centre, also joining us in the hot seat this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
To both of you.
Okay.
We're having conversations about headlines to headlines, the things that we're seeing happening in the country on a daily basis. And over the last month, really, there's been just back to back to back. And if anything to go by, even as here at the Standard Group, the headlines that we've been putting out in terms of the things that have been happening have been quite something that have gotten everybody, riled up, but still important to look at in terms of those stories. So thank you both of you for being here. Before we get into our conversation this morning, Dennis has been in Ethiopia the whole week, and he's brought back proverbs from Ethiopia.
Yes.
He'd like to share this one for today, and we'd like to hear interpretations of it.
Yes, and Ethiopia says they have the Ark of the Covenant in one of the churches there. So if you want to have a glimpse of that, just go to Ethiopia. But as well, they say they have better coffee than Kenyans. But Kenyans, as always, say we have better coffee than them. We equally say we have better athletes than them. But to keep on fighting for more gold medals whenever we have all these races across the world. And our proverb of the day today: no one washes their hands with only one finger. No one washes their hands with only one finger. I'll start with you, Suba. How would you...
I thought you were going to start with me.
You're closer to me. Yeah, how would you interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, I would interpret it to mean that unity of purpose enables us to achieve our goals. That if you have a goal you want to achieve, we'd want to see the kind of unity that we've been seeing with the young people, the Gen Z, so to speak. They have done a commendable job, bypassing some of the divisions that have been used in the past to profile us and profile political leaders. And we'd want to see that unity continue. And so I think the Ethiopian proverb can be seen within the context of our current situation, where, with unity, we can achieve what we purpose to achieve.
Okili.
Yes, this is similar to Kindole Kimoja Kivunji Chawa, meaning that there's nothing you'll do on your own. Just one finger. Can you imagine washing hands? You need the 10 fingers, not just one finger.
Yeah.
It means you need to be united. You need to be together to achieve, and that's the reason that God said, "Fill the earth." There are people everywhere on earth. You would imagine if it was still Adam and Eve just on earth. So when you are together, there are many ways you will help each other. There are many ways you'll be able to achieve together.
Yeah. And if you look even in countries that have bigger populations, the economy tends to perform even better. So
Indeed it does. So in the month of May, a number of things happened, and in the month of May we saw that there was death. There was a murder of a member of parliament, Charles Ongondowere, and that happened. In the month of May also, there was also the inquest into the two brothers who were killed at the hands of the police many years ago. The inquest still continues. Also in the month of May then, there were attacks that happened in Transmara, and people were killed and people were maimed and people were injured. We get into the month of June and Albert Ojwang was murdered at the hands of police again. And things happened after that. Two gentlemen then, again, last seen in the hands of police, were abducted, tortured, and their bodies were found. And they went for post-mortem with some very ugly scenes of things that had happened to them. In the month of June, and then even before that, we had seen that one gentleman, Brian Odhiambo, had disappeared, and there is an inquest going on in terms of where he is and what happened to him. We still don't have a body if he died, neither do we have a living person if he has been returned. He's missing. All of these things have happened, and we're at the middle of and many, many more that I have not mentioned have happened. And the headlines continue to tell us a certain thing. If we look into the conversation that we are having this morning, and I'm just going to use the headlines from the Standard this morning. I mean, look at what we're talking about. Killed by police, blood on their hands, tortured, strangled, killer squad boss, fury against Lagat, big fish free, small ones freed, rather small ones fried, Lagat unmoved, shameless top cops, no, just resign. Headlines to headlines to headlines to headlines to headlines tells the picture of what's happening in the country at the moment. And then we have to ask ourselves, where are we sitting in the middle of all of this? Then, as though we were feeling as though it was safe to get out of the water, the protests then, in commemoration of the previous protests, happened on Wednesday, the 25th of June. Yesterday, we heard a couple of things. From Parliament, we did hear very clearly that, you know what, essentially this has all been whittled down to a political contest where people were then going to use their money to rile up things. We heard that from the Deputy President that this was one of the worst cases of anarchy that the country had ever seen. In fact, I believe he called it the worst, not one of the worst, the worst. And this is the situation in which we are in today. And we have to ask the question that in the sea of all of these headlines that we are seeing, what direction are we really going? And we'll start off with you, Suba.
Yeah, before even the Gen Z, the memorial protest by Gen Zs, I had discussed with a colleague and said, what this country needs is a de-escalation. A de-escalation because if we continue on this path, then we stand the risk or run the risk of getting into more chaos and more deaths. You have already seen that the number of deaths keep on increasing. We started off with 6, then before that there were 8, now we are talking of 15. And there was even talk of some bodies lying at the Quickmart supermarket around the OTC area. I do not know whether they have since been removed, but when I passed there last evening, I saw police on standby. But there have been that talk in town about those bodies. So we could be talking about, the number of deaths in their 20s or 30s, and more so after we get full reports. I was particularly a bit disappointed by the statement issued by my good friend Murkomen. Murkomen consulted for civil society before he joined politics, and I remember even when he decided to go and run, we collected some small amount, whatever we could raise, because we perceived him to be part of us, to support his bid. So he's a friend in that context, and of course, our peer and so on. I was a bit disappointed because we expected a de-escalation. It's the duty of government to de-escalate. We cannot, be in competition with young people who naturally would be idealistic, of course very enterprising, and a bit disappointed, if not thoroughly disappointed by the goings-on. The concerns that the young people have raised are very legitimate. They have concerned about, promises that were made but which are not being fulfilled. Mm-hmm. They have raised concern about government programs that does not seem to place people at the center, because development is about people. And when you are, when we were young growing up in Jericho, here in Nairobi, our parents would take us to hospital. And they would insist that you must be injected. So whatever they decided was good for you, because you were a child. Now, this government seems to treat all Kenyans as though they were children, that they know what is good for them, and that they have no say. And even if they say it, a government will trash whatever you say. So there's a sense in which the very people who broke the walls of Kasarani Sports Ground, you remember during the swearing in?
Yeah.
Yes.
The support that this government had was overwhelming. So much so that there were people who, out of fear that they would be locked out, walipita na gate, as the young people say. So the question that this government needs to ask is, where did they get it wrong, so that the very people who are, they're foot soldiers, who are their keyboard warriors, because I remember even when the opposition, Azimio, held the first round of protests in 2023 for electoral justice, a lot of these young people who are today protesting against the Kenya Kwanza government were its fiercest defenders.
Yes.
And they were keyboard warriors who dismiss anything that Azimio said. Now today, those people have made a 360-degree turn and are wishing even the government away. In fact, ready to occupy State House and do all manner of things. And so I would encourage that, if we really want to get back on track, because we are off the track, then as a country we must de-escalate, and the government must lead in that de-escalation. We have had proposals from the government itself during the peak of the 2024 protest. President William Samoei Ruto did indicate that he was willing to lead the nation in a conversation, in a national conversation. And more recently, when they had some MOU with the opposition, a section of the opposition, let me clarify, because I know my brother here is not part of. Then there was also that understanding that, the 10-point agenda would help to de-escalate things, and specifically refocus the nation on addressing certain critical governance
and
issues.
Shuba, you've raised matters to do with a broad-based government that one would have hoped would have come through to address some of these issues, because remember, these came a few months after the June 25th, 2024 protest. But even as we sit here today and we try to find what is exactly happening, there is the feeling that the government is tone deaf on what is happening in the country. You find these aside from the president calling the Gen Zs treasoners individuals immediately after June 25th, 2024, you hear the statements that has been made by the cabinet secretary, even giving an order to shoot to kill, and one asks, as who do you have that kind of power? But Dan Mazo, you've actually also been mentioned as being behind these protests that happened recently. Just where do we lie as a country with regard to listening to what is being said and addressing the problem?
I want to say that first and foremost.
First of all, any part of it, do you organize the protest?
No. That's what I want to respond to. I want to say the fact that Junet Mohammed, on behalf of the government and on behalf of Parliament, because he's the one who moved a motion, but then went on to talk of the motion, the fact that he says I organized the protest, then means everything else he said was so misguided. The people of Makueni know me very well, that I don't organize protests, but we teach them their rights, the Constitution. No one can suspend the Constitution, including the protesters, including Murkomen. No one. The Constitution of Kenya is a social contract owned by everybody. And that's why under the Constitution of Kenya, elections are held after 5 years. They've got even a specific date. And if you lose in an election, then you should go home. But that's not what we have heard of latest. We have heard quite a number of people associated with Junet say that the government will go nowhere, and say that there is no president who has served for one term. It is the Constitution which dictates on the people, and say that they will not hand over power to the opposition. I want to tell Junet that I did not organize any protests in Makueni, nor did I ship people to Nairobi. I did actually receive a phone call a day before the protest from young people purported to be Gen Zs, and I engaged them on phone, and I realized they are not Gen Zs because the way they wanted to operate, that's not how the Gen Zs operate. Kenyans must know this is what Gen Zs want. First of all, you cannot go into a bank with a line and Gen Zs are there and you purport to overtake the queue. They will throw you out of the bank. If you are driving on the road, the laws of Kenya only know the president, the ambulance and the fire engine. Everybody else is not supposed to go the opposite way of the road or to do another thing. The law knows only those three. And so if you try also to overtake, the Gen Zs will block you and tell you queue like any other person. The Gen Zs look for justice. And in fact, the Gen Zs don't ask for money to go for protests. So that's how that team failed. And I did not send them any money. And I told them I doubted whether they were Gen Zs. So they pestered me a little bit. They called again and again. And I blocked their number. Now, if those are the people I'm supposed to have shipped to Nairobi, then Junet and his government are so mistaken. The same way they have mentioned other people. I can assure you the recent trends of Kenyans. When Matiang'i went to Kisii, in fact, he was being called from Nairobi, and he was thinking maybe he needs to mobilize people. And when he went to Kisii, the people mobilized themselves. No one was paid in those rallies you saw in Kisii to attend. And similarly, I am very doubtful whether anybody has been. In fact, you cannot mobilize such crowds by money. But the current government believes, you should pay people to be able to make a crowd, and that's what they've been doing by using government money to pay people to make a crowd. I'm very surprised by the comments of Murkomen, who is a young man I trust very much. He also consulted with cooperatives. Those days as a young lawyer, and he is one of my friends. And that time I was a secretary at the Ministry of Cooperatives. And he used to come by and we will introduce him to cooperatives and we will give him some work. And he will do a very good job in explaining what cooperatives do and things like that. So I'm surprised, our juries too should know. In fact, the story in Makueni shooting, the truth better be known, and this is where the government is going wrong. It was done by plainclothes people who had a Subaru, and they just shot randomly. Initially killed 2, and later on another young man was found dead in one of the sewers there.
These are eyewitness accounts, Senator?
No, this is eyewitness account. Information I've gotten because I've got my, people who work for me, the office of the Senate, and who happen to have seen exactly what happened. So and the families are in touch with me. They have been given a very difficult time, even to move the bodies. Similarly to the families with people with the gun, bullets stuck in their bodies. They are being given very funny procedures which are not in any law. Be told you need, for you to be treated by a doctor or for you to be operated on, you need some police document. There is nothing like that. A doctor is supposed to save life. So and similarly, it's very difficult, even from previous cases, for postmortem to be done on those people. And the police does everything to make another story and to cover up and to say the bullet was not the one. In the previous case of a young man shot in Mali, luckily the people picked the bullet and gave it to Mutula Kilonzo Jr. And they were unable to be done postmortem on till Mutula Kilonzo intervened by looking for, the top police bosses. And that's the situation Kenyans are living on. So when I see lies in Parliament, I get surprised by Junet. I get surprised by Boss because the former Chief Justice was only with the widows and also mothers who have lost children. They have been walking to every office day by day looking for justice. The only public inquest we have seen on Rex Masai and the other 2 you have mentioned, a very bad cover-up is going on there. And the real witnesses who saw, the person who killed Rex Masai is known. So there's no need to go around about it. The gun used to kill Rex Masai is known. And all those ballistics can be produced.
So if things like this are known, then why is it so difficult to have something done in terms of prosecution, in terms of charge, in terms of calling to court for justice to be served? Because this is the thing. If things are in the open, they are right there. We know. If you're saying, Senator, that we know, then why don't we have legislative bodies?
There's a lot of information with the people, and there are many people willing to give evidence. But unfortunately, the government institutions are compromised. The police, which is supposed to collect evidence, collects very weak evidence, which cannot sustain a conviction. DPP, which is supposed to prosecute, that our constitution gives a lot of power to the DPP. Even when you prepare for private prosecution, they can take it over and terminate it. And therefore, there has been no goodwill from the government in seeking justice for those who have suffered, for where police have misbehaved. The case of Matu, I was called immediately after it happened by somebody who knows me from there and said these young people were just passing by the police station. Then an officer decides to fire bullets on them. So after they're fallen, the rest of Wananchi now get upset and now come for the police post. What I want Murkomen and company to know is that the sovereign power of this country belongs to the people.
I would like us to take a listen to what the CS said yesterday. Then it gives us context to then be able to move a few steps in this conversation. So just listen to that.
Paper. The headlines for the last 2 months or 3 months have always been about security and insulting people without resorting at one instance to ask for feedback from anybody, not even any person. Now they have these interesting headlines that pass judgment on the Inspector General of Police, the Minister, the President. Of course, the President lives on their headline. The question of closing or not closing depends on the circumstance. You have to weigh between national interest and also the individual interests of media houses. The national interest at any given time will be weighed. And if it's necessary to close a media house so that you can serve the nation, of course you do it.
Ile shida yenye inafanya hata polisi za ingine ipige wakora risasi ni kwa sababu wanashikwa, wanaenda, wanarudi, wanakuja kuchekelea polisi kuambia sasa tulifika wapi, hakuna penye tumeenda. Si ni ukweli? Na tumeambia polisi mtu yoyote mwenye atakaribia police station piga yeye risasi.
So that was very clear.
Yeah.
So that could be the reason why we heard what you said, Senator.
Now,
that
you know, a police
yoyote ambaye
atapitia karibu na police station
piga risasi. Okay.
Now, I want to say that is very wrong, and we have had a lot of reckless statements from some of the government officers. We have had reckless statements from the leader of majority of National Assembly and leader of majority of Senate. We've had talk of impunity. You can see the good people who had gone to be around Murkomen were very upset with him and even told him one time on his face. Because he knows very well as a lawyer what he say cannot happen. A police station is supposed to be a place of refuge. When you get into trouble, the people who should assist you are police officers because they are security officers. But unfortunately now, the police stations are the ones which have become the places you will go for refuge. Then you get killed. And when you get killed in a police station, people want to say there was no killing. Yeah, you hit your head on the wall and died. And then yet the postmortem report, even from the government pathologist, show this person has beatings from toe, to the head. And dies out of assault. You know there's somebody must be brought to book in that circumstance. And again, there was a young man from Makueni who had done the CCTV, and he gets arrested for 12 Subarus at his home at 2 a.m. So when he is arrested, he's taken and he says, you see, I got threatened and I was told you are the one who did the CCTV, delete it. But he knew, even if you just do a mere deletion, there are so many backup systems, the video is still there. So later on he defended himself and said, the video is still there. So why are you arresting me?
So, Wakili, as we talk about what is happening in the country and even the statements being made by the the Minister for Interior, there is also what the Constitution says: sovereign power belongs to the people, and they can exercise this right either directly or indirectly. The Constitution grants Kenyans the right to go picket and demonstrate peaceably. So, the police are mandated to protect protesters once they've received the notification. The IG and the commander agreed and told Kenyans that they indeed had received the notification. Then there is the right to information. So when you hear the Cabinet Secretary making all these statements, just what does this do to a country that is already this hurt and angry with regard to what is happening from the governing class?
Yeah, first of all, this second wave of protests are a creation of government itself. For some time, the Gen Zs have been somehow struggling to get back to the street. Many are the occasions when Morara Kebaso, for example, called a rally in Uhuru Park. The turnout was very poor. They have occasionally, made announcements. But then Eliud Lagat happens. And out of nowhere, acts completely out of context, overreacts to a situation whose context we are yet to understand. I'm told you people are also victims here. You hosted GSU officers who came to establish whether indeed the standard, because you seem to be in the crosshairs of the political elite. All this happening. And then you ask yourself whether before as somebody is promoted up to that level, whether they are emotional intelligence, because I think when you act in the manner in which Lagat did, is of course the DIG, and of course Masengeli is not different. We also saw the drama around Masengeli and the Kitengela, four. Then you wonder whether what kind of interview do these people go through? Because by the time you reach that level, right from the officer commanding station, I was looking at the face of Talam, who is now in custody, and I was seeing a father who should now be looking at things from the rear view mirror, not just the windshield. Because young people tend to look at things through the windshield. And so I asked myself, why would a DIG visit all this upon its a government that is part of, a society that it should be protecting, and so on and so forth? There was this action of getting Albert Ojwang arrested, all the way from his village home in Kakoth, in Homa Bay County, and transport. Was reckless, in my view. And we have not, as a public, been told this is the post that led to this, because his X account seems to have been deleted. And as they say, one thing led to another, and now we are talking about the late Albert Ojwang. So we have had this situation, first of all, precipitated by a very senior government official, and government should acknowledge, yes, it is wrong for young people to have whoever it is who touched police stations in Kikuyu, I think also in Nyandarua and so on. It is criminal. Those who may have looted, I passed next to OTC, and the small scale business people, young women and men trying to eke a living, are now jobless. And so we do not want to see a Gen Z protest that leads to joblessness. We want, because part of their grievance is that there is unemployment. Yes. And so they need to also help us to protect the few who have jobs. But when people in government, and I started getting worried before the protests themselves, when we were getting conflicting information. You have rightly pointed out that the regional commandant acknowledged, I think he's called Mr. Seda, acknowledged that they had received a notification as required under the law, and that they would protect. But then comes government spokesman, Isaac Mwaura, who says there'll be no such thing, that, people, whoever wants to condole with the families can do it at their own home. I mean, that was heartless. You do not, as a government spokesman, you do not talk in that manner and in that tone, as if 60 people are as few to warrant people condoling with the families and so on, and observing and laying reeds at their own homes.
But it seems that there is a message that's being passed here, and we're not just hearing what they're saying. They're saying something very clearly. Yeah, they're saying something, and I don't know how it's. I feel that when somebody opens their mouth to say something, that we should actually hear what they're saying. That you may talk about 60 people, Suba. You may talk about issues that people have brought to the fore in terms of a protest, and they have said that we have issues with governance, we have issues with the debt, we have issues with the lack of this, that, the other thing. We have issues with poor governance. We want those things to be addressed. We will you to do better. We feel that we're overtaxed and underserviced. But when the answer that comes out of the mouth after a protest is that if you come near a police station, we will shoot you. When the answer that comes about is that you must, stick to the law. When the answer that comes from some of those things is that, well, we're going to do everything we can to protect the nation. They're telling you something, and we just don't seem to be hearing what it is that they're saying. They're saying something. They are.
Definitely. Of course, when Isaac Mwaura, spoke the way he did, you, as a government spokesman, you must have gotten the instructions from somewhere. I don't know how that office operates. Unfortunately, everyone who has served in that office, including Alfred Mutua, They always, there's something about them. I don't know whether it's about them or about the office that makes them speak things that are not even sensible. But then you get a sense that they are instructed, or perhaps they are given the content, and it's done for them, and they
or that there is a script that
there's
has
a
been
script.
passed
So
about, and
when I
everybody
saw him speak, then I said, Gen Zs are being set up. The police is saying this. On the other hand, the government spokesman is saying this on the and as if to supersede whatever the police spokesman, the police officer had said, and the officer who spoke was the regional commander in charge of the whole city, and who acknowledged that he has received a notice. So I could clearly see that the demonstrations were not going to be peaceful. There was a bit of some pretense of restraint, I must admit. But when the TV stations were switched off, then I started fearing for the worst. That what is it that they do not want the public to see? And you see, access to information during protests is one of the key principles of government's role in promoting, protecting, and facilitating protests. Because you who maybe is not part of the protest would want to know what is happening out there. So that in case you are driving in the way of the protest, you may want to take another route and avoid, a direct confrontation with the protesters. You do not want to be caught, for example, in the crossfire, stray bullets. Remember the poor guard somewhere around Ngara who was found killed. I suspect probably a stray bullet, just fired carelessly by an officer at people. So you don't want to be caught in those situations. And that's why access to information becomes very, very critical. But what do we see? The Communications Authority becomes the jury, the judge, and executioner in its own case, and bypasses all due process and makes a decision after raising a complaint to itself. Comes to the conclusion that ladies and gentlemen of the press, you only have this number of minutes, and those of you who are not quick enough, who are quickly switched off air, and that for us as civil society actors is unfortunate, because the right to protest, over and above being, guaranteed under Article 37 of the Constitution, is a fundamental human right, which even if it was not in the Constitution, would remain a fundamental human right, internationally recognized under international human rights standards, and which Kenyans have been exercising. We attained independence partly because of protest. Citizens are the forebearers of this nation, and that's why the sovereignty you talked about earlier, comes to the fore and becomes very, very critical. But over and above, I still want to go back to my earlier point. It is time the government de-escalated. The tone I saw in the CS speech reminds me of the tone in His Excellency's speech immediately after, Parliament was breached. And the president was, later on reflected, apparently, and came back, now to address Kenyans as part and parcel of, the leadership that Kenyans put in place in 2022. And so we'd want to see the CS also, after the anger of yesterday, come back to the people and say, or the president now coming to override what the CS said and saying, we need a national dialogue, we need a national conversation, and we need to sit down as a people, because throughout our history as Kenya, we have always had opportunity and set aside our contestations and said, let us now have a national conversation and come up with practical solutions to some of these
with that
issues.
In place as well. There is what is being seen as though we are on our own. There is that feeling that the political class that you belong to, Danmazo, feels as though we are on our own. And why am I saying this? You remember when the MP Charles Ongondo was killed and how fast-tracked the investigations took place. Here we're talking about 60 lives that were taken by the police 1 year later, and nothing tangible we've seen. We look at Albert Ojwang's death, and even statements that came from the House of Parliament. You remember Junet Mohammed saying, go and kill your son and mourn on your own, and mourn your own. You hear such statements, and Kenyans say, but these people don't care about us. We are on our own. We'll fight our own fight. And right now, looks as though Kenyans, it has become a situation where it is us against them. How how do we get out of that mess? It can't be it is Kenyans against the police. It can't be it is Kenyans against the political class. From the house that you belong in, being in politics, how do we have these conversations among yourselves and among Kenyans for us to find a solution?
I want to say that first and foremost, the government and even parliament seems to have isolated itself from the people. They have very little information as to what is happening. If you hear the speeches on the floor of the parliament yesterday in relation to the motion of Junaid Mohammed, first of all, Junaid Mohammed has lost, he's not in touch with the ground. He's not in touch with the people. He doesn't understand that no one sponsored this maandamano in any way. I heard them even accuse the church. I attended that church service at All Saints Cathedral. It had been organized by National Council of Churches. And this is the second anniversary. And all the families with missing children, there are so many families suffering. Dead children, people have been abducted. Many of them came and they gave their stories, not all of them. And even when some young man came in and protested, about the killing of the young man on the streets, or the shooting, of the young man who was a hawker. He came, he said prayers don't work. He was given his chance and the church allowed him to go. So at no point in that church service did I hear the clergymen incite anybody. They just read verses which reflect us. Like there was a reading of Habakkuk 1, 2 to 4. A situation clearly like what we have here now, where the leadership, where justice, nothing prevails. And after that, they said you do a press conference outside the church, and you could see the feeling of the people. The parliament, although was elected by the people and is supposed to be a reflection of the people, I want to say that the current parliament has lost it completely. It is under total capture of the state. And the state also, you remember that after the first maandamano, the president said these are just criminals and, branded them. When you have a situation as you have, you must stop a little bit and think. If they were criminals, if all the people in 27 counties who went to the streets are criminals, then how will you prosecute them? What will you charge them? Do you have enough magistrates to prosecute them? Do you have enough system? So it means we have something else in place which must be dealt with by the leadership. Kenyans are very annoyed with the activities. When you say shoot and kill anybody who comes near a police station. So now somebody who has been robbed, how will they go and report to a police station we have been robbed and there's an order to kill and shoot? I think that was very careless. There have been very many careless statements which the state needs to rectify. You cannot say you'll never hand over power or you won't hand over power. You cannot say that no president has ever served one term. We must serve 2 terms by whatever means. Because the constitution is clear. So we all have a good constitution. No one wants to overrun the constitution. No one wants to remove the constitution because the constitution is in place. And elections are held after every 5 years. What I want to urge Kenyans to do as part of what is possible to deal with this nasty situation. Number one, all these young people who are demonstrating, please, most of them are not registered as Kenyans. Please acquire an identity card which is free for now. Then there is going to be registration for elections. Register as a voter. Then upon registering as a voter, then vote. Remember, 8 million Kenyans did not vote. So the moment you sit on a day it is voting and you have a voting card, and you don't want to go and decide how you want your government to be, then later on you may have no one to blame. So please, Kenyans should now come out in large numbers as they come out to reject this government, vote against it, bring in a good government, and the country moves on. So the best solution I could give for the current government is to remove it. I'll tell you why. And you've heard the Honorable Badi talk about it, Ruto and his skunk, which is also now helping him carry. Now, those days, the things, it is true. The CSS And the PSS, we have a lot of incompetent people there. They come to parliament, they appear in parliament in committees, they are unprepared, they have no idea. You know, President Kibaki used to promote the directors. People who've been working for civil service.
In those sectors,
they become the PSs. Somebody would rise from a DO to a DC to a PS, and they will understand very well how to run the government and how to advise the president. We have a useless, presidential advisors. People have no idea what it is. Some of them just careless talkers. No one thinks that we need the nation. So the best way to deal with this is to remove this government through the votes. That's the best way. And I want to tell Junet Mohammed and the company, they are so misguided. They have no idea. The people of Makueni know me very well. I don't even buy a vote. And I don't buy people. You should convince people to vote for you because you are going to represent them properly. It is not how you come with money and bribe. I have no money to bribe anybody, and I have no money to buy anyone. And I did not sponsor a single incident in Makueni. And I want IPOA to investigate the 3 deaths in Emali in Makueni, the protests in Wote. And I want to say also, there are responsible policemen in this country. In Meru, the policemen moved with the people the way it's supposed to be. In Kitui, the policeman came and asked the people, what do you want us to do? And they demonstrated together, and there were no distractions. But if even the law is in place, we have very good laws from the Constitution to the Public Order Act, which is colonial. It says there must be proclamation. Give loud and clear. And give people enough time to disperse and go to their homes. But when people gather here in Kenya to protest, and they are just bypassing a police station, you shoot them, you provoke them. If you begin a protest and the first thing you get is a tear gas canister fired, then you are provoking the people. The problem of the current protests has been escalated by the police themselves, by the government, by misjudgment, and they must take responsibility. They have killed people. The kidnappings must stop. The killings must stop, and we must look for reparation of the people.
So, but I want to ask you this question, is that one of the issues that have come up quite often, just in line with what Senator is saying, is that the trust deficit in institutions that are supposed to carry out these processes then is an issue.
Yes.
That if you say certain things must change, constitutionally, the change is vested in institutions that have been given a constitutional mandate to do certain things. IEBC, IPOA, Parliament, the National Assembly, the Senate. And there is a lack of trust in those institutions. And this is where we see the clash, or the friction, or the frustration, whereby we can say, well, you know what you need to do? Go get an ID, vote, and then we'll be fine. The problem is that the systemized or the systemic issues that have been there for years continue to be there today. How do you undo the system? Because that's what people are crying for. It's the system that is against you. And it's the same system that will say the things that we are talking about now, where we cry that why should you have somebody in the street who has a constitutional right to be there and then you shoot at them? It's a system issue. Why should we have 60 people dead at the hands of the ammunition from police and no question has asked? It's a system issue. The problems that have been brought to the fore, they are all systemic. How do you deal with that system?
Exactly. And you see, this is why, and I like it when you start with the IEBC, because that's where it all begins. When we do not get our elections right, we never have had conclusive elections, I think, since 2002. The last time Kenyans went to the polls and felt that their vote had counted was in 2002. These subsequent elections, there'll always be issues, contestations, and demand for electoral justice. And we have seen it manifest in the form of protests immediately after the election, even after the Supreme Court, which some of us who are privileged to write the Constitution at Bomas thought would help resolve some of those issues, had spoken. People still felt that even that Supreme Court, had not done the right thing. And we've seen what has been happening since 2013. And you recall how, President William Ruto, immediately after being elected, constantly reminding the public that there'll be no nusumukati. What do we have today? So you are right in saying that, all these things stem from political dysfunctionality. Yeah? He's been quoting my good friend. I'm a friend to some of these politicians because we were with them in the trenches during the olden days when we were fighting for multi-partyism and so on. Junaid Mohammed is a friend. But when you see him speak like that, it is out of political dysfunctionality. So much so that even when President Ruto swears almost by the Bible that there will be no, nusumkate, he ends up establishing one even faster than those who have established such. So this political dysfunctionality leads to constitutional drift. So we drift away from the constitution and the institutions that have been established. We had, in fact, a very good idea, and which is there in the constitution, about the Chapter 15 commissions, constitutional commissions and independent offices. The whole idea was that as Kenyans demanded that we reduce the powers vested in the presidency, we had to find another mechanism of getting those powers exercised by pro-people institutions. Actually, constitutional commissions are people's institutions. But what do we see today? Apart from the first commissions that were established in 2013, increasingly we are seeing commissions whose occupants have misinterpreted their mandate to think that they are more government than the state itself, instead of seeing themselves as people's institutions. So the IBC will do everything it can to deliver to whoever is incumbent, and if it so happens that they are defending their seat, all these commissions. And apart from the EACC, there are a few that are doing a good job. Like the EACC, in my view, we are overwhelmed by corruption. So we don't quite see the good work they are doing. But I would sit here and tell you authoritatively that I'm ready to stand and defend EACC because we can see. But because we are overwhelmed by corruption, we do not quite able to quantify. The Kenya National Commission trying what it can under very difficult circumstances. A lot of these commissions are underfunded, therefore, as part of a strategy to cripple them from delivering on their mandate, and a few others that I may cite. Indeed. But by and large, all these institutions, including Parliament, which my good friend is part of, have dysfunctioned, They are part of the political dysfunctionality. Because if Parliament was the Parliament that it was supposed to be, they ought not to have taken off yesterday on the day of the protest.
In the 5 meter wide.
Exactly. They should have been the people enjoying the confidence of the people as representatives of the people, directly elected by the people.
They should not be put in reservoir there.
Exactly, in the first place.
Barricaded from the very people and so on and so forth. And so it's a manifestation of political dysfunctionality, leading to the drift in constitutionalism that we see almost with every public institution that has been established.
That needs to definitely be sorted out because things cannot continue like this, that's for sure. And that's one of the cries of the people. Dan Manzo is a senator for Makwene County, has been here with us this hour, as well as Suba Churchill, who is Executive Director, Kenya National Civil Society Centre. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here this morning. 9:01.
The Newswire, I'm Edwin Lisamira. Makwene Senator Dan Manzo has dismissed claims that he sponsored Wednesday's protest in which 16 people died and more than 400 others were injured. It comes a day after a heated debate in the National Assembly where Suna East MP Junaid Mohammed rallied MP's support to compel investigative agencies to probe former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and his allies over Wednesday's chaos. Speaking on the Situation Room show here on SpiceFM, Manzo said it did not ship people to Nairobi to disrupt the protests that were characterized by widespread looting and vandalism of property.
The fact that Junaid Mohammed, on behalf of the government and on behalf of Parliament, because he's the one who moved a motion, but then went on to talk of the motion, the fact that he says I organized the protest, that means everything else he said was so misguided. The people of Makwene know me very well, that I don't organize protests, but we teach them their rights, the Constitution. No one can suspend the Constitution, including the protesters, including Murkomen.
Manso, however, disclosed that he was approached by unnamed individuals seeking facilitation to take part in the protest.
The Gen Zs look for justice, and in fact the Gen Zs don't ask for money to go for protests. So that's how that team failed, and I did not send them any money, and I told them I doubted whether they were Gen Zs. So they pestered me a little bit. They call again and again, and I blocked their number. Now if those are the people I'm supposed to have shipped to Nairobi, then Junet and his government are so mistaken.
Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has cancelled his 3-day tour of Embu County, citing Wednesday's nationwide protests. In a statement posted on X, Gachagua, who was to begin the tour today, said he'd taken the decision in solidarity with the young people who lost their lives and the business community who've lost billions of shillings due to what he described as the deafness of this rogue regime. Gachagua said he'd also stood down his media briefing with media houses in the Embu region. He further dismissed claims that he sponsored the protests, saying the government was scapegoating after failing to secure the protesters and prevent destruction of property by, in his words, state-sponsored goons. In Trans Nzoia County, more than 145 retired employees of the defunct Kitale municipality have called on Chief Justice Martha Koome and Senate Speaker Amason Kingi to intervene to ensure that they are compensated. They've decried delays in receiving 95 million shillings in compensation as ordered by the court in 2005.
Honorable Chief Justice, tunaomba msaada wako utusikize yale ambayo tumeyapitia hapa katika Trans Nzoia County. Mambo yanatendeka hapa kotini na ni kama hayafuatiliwi. Koti imeoza, ni kama koti imeshikana na employer kutunyanyasa sisi waliyekuwa wafanyakazi. Tunaomba ukuje chini usikize malilio yetu na yale mambo ambayo yanatendeka hapa. Tuna uhakika, tuna haki na tuko na the preferred documents. Ukweli ambao tuko nao nafikiri utasaidia mahakama.
Naitwa Catherine Naliaka. Tunaomba Chief Justice Martha Koome aweze kusikia kilio chetu kufuatana na barua ambayo tumemwandikia last week, na tuitie hata huyo judge atuweke pamoja aulize kwa nini hatendi haki.
Iranian authorities have carried out a wave of arrests and multiple executions of people suspected of links to Israeli intelligence agencies in the wake of the recent war between the two countries. It comes after what officials describe as an unprecedented infiltration of Iranian security services by Israeli agents. Authorities suspect information fed to Israel played a part in a series of high-profile assassinations during the conflict. This included the targeted killings of senior commanders from the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and nuclear scientists, which Iran attributes to operatives of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency working inside the country. That's the Newswire. I'm Edwin Lisamira.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In this country, 6 families and 8,000 Kenyans control 90% of the GDP. We are not a country. We are a plantation. We work for Ruto.
When you're telling the judges court orders are papers or they will not obey court orders, they're sitting and you're seeking orders from them. So how are they supposed to interpret it? Isn't it an oxymoron?
When you see a judiciary that seems to be under some control somewhere, you start questioning. We have very powerful governors, but they don't use their offices to serve the people.
If you are not shameful to do what you are doing, why should we protect you?
I'm human. Everybody's human. So when you're told, kuja tuongee, I mean, you'd be a fool to say, stagi kuongea. Conversations have to be had, you know?
People in leadership should only go into leadership if they are ready and willing to change the lot of the people.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Traffic.
All right, it's not too busy a Friday morning. Let's take a quick look at what's happening on the roads right about now. We saw some traffic that had built on Dogo Road as you get then towards Landis and then out towards Kamkunji, but we're doing all right for the most part here. Coming in on the eastern bypass towards North Airport Road, a little bit of traffic also on Outer Ring as we then get towards that Embakasi Loop. That's looking a bit busy still right about now. But as you get into the city, as you're coming off Langati Road, you'll be doing okay. Also just a little bit of traffic then left as you come off of Kiambu Road. And let's see what happens as you come out of traffic hour, shall we? SpiceFM KE on X, hashtag the Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Coming into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, this is the Situation Room this hour, and then we finish the week as we do with conversations that are necessary to have, where I ask you a question, whether you are passionate about a better Kenya and actually seeing that to fruition. Well, if you are, so is the INM Foundation, is dedicated to social programs that matter. For the last 5 years has been putting together 2% of its annual profit, which is the highest in the Kenya banking sector so far, and making sure that these sustainable programs can actually come to light. One of those has been the issue around environmental conservation and has been leading the charge front and center in terms of impact and how the securing of national resources can natural resources can actually be put to play. They're dedicated to protecting our precious natural heritage through strategic partnerships and community-based initiatives, ensuring a sustainable future for all. They believe in impact, and are achieving it through focused action. And you also then can learn how you and the INM Foundation's vital work can potentially collaborate towards that. So you can visit www.imbankgroup.com/foundation to learn more, powered by INM Bank.
And business owners, are you there? Business owners. Are transaction costs cutting into your bottom line, or do you need capital to grow? I&M Bank is powering your hustle with the I&M Solo Biz account. Lower your costs with the free bank to M-Pesa and Airtel money transfers. Receive customer payments easily with Lipa and M-Pesa. But there's much more. Need to restock? Use Jaza Stock. Now, fulfilling a bigger order, get LPO financing plus access unsecured business loans of up to 5 million shillings. Stop just running your business, start growing it, which is very important. Open your individual or solo biz account today via the I&M Bank on the Go app.
Definitely the way to go. And we've been having all-inclusive conversations over, the longest time, and trying to get to the point whereby we say it's absolutely necessary and important to bring in different focus groups and have conversations around those areas. This morning, we don't stop and we continue as we look into the youth perspective. Two gentlemen join us in the hot seats of the Situation Room this morning. Patrick Kungo is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and Mark Okoh is the youth coordinator, the National Students Council of Kenya, and both are here this morning. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Do.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Doing fine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
We're going to get into this conversation. We're going to have a real one about some of the things that we see and some of the things that ought to be done. We'll talk, but in the meantime, Dennis is going to give you today's proverb. He'll tell you where it's from, and we'd like to get your interpretation of the same.
You see, the proverb today comes from a country where if you want to be 8 years younger, you just make sure you get citizenship of that country. We're talking about Ethiopia, which, according to them, they are in 2017. So if you want to be more 8 years, just go to Ethiopia. But then again, there's a lot about Ethiopia. They consider themselves to be home of coffee. Some of the best coffees in the world, Ethiopia. Kenyans used to say ours is better. But then again, there is also the matters to do with the athlete, who is better, nani anakimbia mbali sana and faster. We also have that. But also it is home of Blue Nile. Home of Blue Nile. They're constructing one of the biggest dams that will help the country with matters to do with power and energy. Sure. And our proverb today: no one washes their hands with only one finger. no one washes their hands with only one finger. I'll start with you, Patrick.
Well, I think that the way I interpret it is that you'll need all your fingers for you to effectively wash your hands. So basically it's telling us that we need each other. If we need to see change, we need to work together. So basically for me, that's how I interpret it. So it's more like kidole kimoja hakivunji chao. Exactly.
Okoh.
Yeah, I think it's more of a similar interpretation that if you want to do something more effectively, you need like a collective contribution towards it, and none of us can singularly achieve, without the help or resourcing it from other sources in terms of getting just the help to do something. Yes. Yeah.
Everybody plays a role here.
Yes, everybody plays a role.
Coming together.
Yes.
Okay, so great. Because we have conversations around the youth perspective and saying that, should it just be young people on their own? These folks who have the majority in terms of population, who then say, well, since we are the biggest in numbers, then should we not just be then charting the course and looking for our own leader? But should we actually then say, because we are the largest in number, can we make sure that we are involved in the conversation towards better governance and things like that? I'd like to get an overall perspective of where you're coming from that. Let's start with you, Okoh. When we talk about, saying participation in governance, and we tend to think that governance can only then be practiced if you have a position, president, governor, senator, member of parliament, MCA, and we think, okay, well, when you have that title behind your name, that's when you are in governance. But let's take an overview first of all. When we're talking about inviting everybody in to have this conversation, where do we stand?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I think it depends with what actually needs to be achieved, right? So, for example, if what we are seeing today is that most young people like existing in terms of decentralized structures, right? We are partyless, we are tribeless, we are leaderless, we are ungoverned. We like operating under decentralized structures. But you ask yourself, to what end, right? So if it is in the form of activism, there are things which we would wish to achieve via activism, right? Going to the street, etc., then decentralized structures will most likely work. But if you reach to the point where you'll need some of the things that you are advocating for, say it's good governance, etc., what I've often learned that in politics you can never go against the tide. What will need work will need to persuade our young people is that they will need to then form themselves under centralized structures, right? So even if you want to take up these seats that they are advocating for, say in 2027, of course they must come under some party. They must roll themselves under some leaders. They cannot be say that they're tribeless, etc. So I think, to the end into which they will expect some of these things to be implemented, they would then need to come under centralized structures.
Then again, there is the entire conversation on, as much as there is the talk of partyless, leaderless, tribeless, there is the fact that whatever is being pushed right now is we want justice, we want end to corruption, we want addressing unemployment in the country, we want fidelity to the rule of law and constitutionalism. And if you just listen to some of the listeners who are listening this morning, they're saying, just deal with all these issues that you are raising, and Kenya will be a better place to go. So where do you stand, Wakili, in terms of fidelity to the rule of law, the issues being raised, and the need to address those, and perhaps Kenya will be on a good highway?
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100%. Because if you listen to what the young people are agitating for, they're actually telling the government to actually just adhere to the rule of law, follow the constitution, and we'll be okay. Now, you haven't seen the Gen Z saying that Ruto must go and we have this person that we want to make president. That is not the argument that the young people are having. They are actually telling the government needs to follow the law. The government needs to adhere to the dictates of the constitution. And as much as structures and centralized structures are important, the way I see this whole movement, I think the way the Gen Zs are approaching it is actually working. Because if you see how the government is trying to counter the same, we saw, I think it was yesterday in Parliament, when they were discussing the aftermath of 25th. you could see the discussion that was there. They were trying to trivialize the whole issue and try to blame other political leaders for what happened. So from where I sit it as these people trying to bring this whole conversation to somewhere where they can be able to manage it, and that is through politics. But what the young people are actually fighting for is economic liberation. So you cannot bring a political solution to an economic problem. So that is where the government, I think, is getting it wrong. And I think if they would have the will to listen to what the people are actually saying, we won't need to have demonstration in the streets and people fighting every day. They just have to listen, and after listening, actually have that will to do what they have been told, not just some PR activities here and there, and then getting back to the default settings.
So they're hearing, they're discussing it in Parliament. That clearly shows that finally there are inroads being made. But when it comes to implementation and addressing really to the T what is being raised is where we have challenges. Okoh, why do you think that's the case? That we are hearing, we are listening, but when it comes to implementation, where rubber meets the road, nothing really seems to be working.
Yeah, perhaps Patrick, before I answer that question, I would need to maybe retaliate whatever my brother said. I think there is a political fix to this thing, and I've often been asking myself, is this movement really tribeless? Is it like the more things change, the more they still remain the same? Because if you look at the way these protests were happening the other day, why is it that in dominated places where it's, how do we perceive it, the broad-based dominated places, we were not able to see the Gen Zs from these places on the streets? If you look at Nyanza, entire Nyanza, it was entirely peaceful. There were no protests. If you go to Western, if you go to Coast, if you go to a majority, if you go to Northeastern, is there a connotation to this that perhaps it's not that entirely tribeless, and the areas that are being socially perceived to be out of government are the ones that are leading in this demonstration? So is it a connotation? Because the people who are saying is that how can the Nyanza the Gen Zs from Nyanza decide to go to the streets when they are already now being socially perceived that they are currently in government? In answering your question as to why now when it comes to the implementation it becomes a challenge, now Patrick, there's something called structural dependency, and this is something that exists all over in the world, that for a government, for politicians to be effective, they create this thing called structural dependency, that we do not want to give you too much that you'll start that will leverage your thinking in another way, but we just want to give you that little just for your basic needs. That's why I think many a times governments and politicians are very reluctant in giving an overhaul help or implementation of some of these things. They want you to be dependent. They do not want to give these young people jobs so that they are politically...
It's not their job.
Yeah,
let's start there. It is not the job of government to give jobs.
Yes,
it's the job of government to create an environment where these jobs will then happen. That if they don't do the things that they're supposed to do, then perhaps one could see that, okay, there's the reluctance to do that. But I have to ask, what do you think they would gain if they don't create an environment that is conducive? Because what are we talking about? If we get down to the brick and mortar, what are we talking about when we say creating a conducive environment? That means if somebody wants to start business, that maybe you make it a little bit easier, that they don't need 330,000 shillings to get a license in one, sector, or that they don't need 15 different licenses if they wanted to open a restaurant, kind of thing that we're talking about. Or if you wanted a small shop where you were selling goods, that you didn't need so many things. Those are the barriers that we're talking about breaking. What would be the gain for somebody to not create that environment? What would they gain?
Yes, I think there might be the distincts about creating jobs and creating an enabling environment. As I've said, it's structural dependency, okay? What do I mean by structural dependency? If today I'm an unemployed young man, okay, and government creates... remember, the people who run governments are politicians, okay? Generally, they're the ones where the buck stops with. So if Mark Okoh, somebody who is a young person who is unemployed today, and you give him a job where today he's, from Monday to Friday, he needs needs to report. Say even if I'm working here at Standard Media every day, I don't even have the time to, I won't have the time to go to the streets. If somebody will need me to use me for political purposes, that's what I mean by structural dependency, because for my basic needs are already covered. The person who is employed, the way they think about politics, they think around it, policy direction, etc., etc. But people who are unemployed, they think about handouts. They think about how. So it's called structural dependency.
So are you saying that people are in the street because they lack, I think, anything else to do?
No, not like they lack anything else to do. But a majority of those people in the streets, one is that majority of them are unemployed. A person who is employed, first of all, many of them do not have the latitude to even go to the street.
But you see, even those who are going to the streets today, some of them are going there to push for the idea that the government creates a better working environment for these jobs to be able to come up, so they can be entrepreneurs with their own SMEs and that they're working. So that the government needs to address the debt issue in the country, so that when an entrepreneur goes to the bank to ask for loan, it is easily received because the government has created that environment. And failure for the government to do that, therefore, this young person you say that is idle, finds himself out there. If you look at it from the other side, then it is the government that is shooting itself on the foot, because it is the one that is encouraging these young people to go out there and even fight them in regard to demanding for the very best. So then the question, Wakili, here comes where, fine, young people are out there, we are demanding for A, B, C, D to be done, but is not being done. With regard to fidelity of the law and the promises that were given, all the charters that were signed with the young people, do they feature anywhere in law? Or are those just promises and manifestos?
Well, first of all, when this government was campaigning, it made a lot of promises, very colorful and beautiful promises to the people, and especially to the young people. And I think that is one of the things that actually fueled this whole Gen Z revolution. Because the moment you promise heaven and people actually believe in you, and then they look at you as this person who's going to take them from the situation that they are in and take them to the next level, then you take government and then you forget everything that you had talked about. I think that that is one of the things that actually instigated this whole Gen Z movement, because they had a lot of hope. Once the government came into place, they started doing totally different things than what they had promised the young people. So, the way I look at it, as we have a lot of economical issues that the young people are pushing for, but also it has reached a point where they are now pushing for human rights, right? Now, as much as they want to have an environment where they can do business, an environment where they can thrive, we've seen the government, we've seen them, young people dying in the hands of police. Now, that also brings in another aspect of us fighting for our human rights. I might have a job. I might go and represent a client, and that client pays me well. But when I get home, I see on the news that there's a person who has been arrested, and that person has died in a police cell. Now that instills fear in me, because tomorrow it might be me, it might be my brother, it might be my sister who has been arrested, and then he or she loses his or her life in a police cell. So this thing is not only about the people, the young people who don't have jobs. Even the people who have jobs right now are fearing for their human rights because they are not safe. You get? So as much as there's some people who are fighting so that they can have a space where they can earn a living, there's another group that is fighting to make sure that, yes, myself at this particular moment, I'm comfortable in what I do, but I feel I'm not safe because in the hands of the police, the people who are supposed to protect me, I might also die in their hands. So we need also to look at that, because now the government is not only messing the economy, it is also messing when it comes to dealing with human beings and their rights. And that, I think, is also, instigating and also fueling up the kind of uprising that we are seeing. Yeah.
What is characterizing this uprising? Because I'm wondering if there is concert in terms of what everybody feels is the issue, and how it should actually then be addressed. It sounds that sometimes we try to call a thing a certain way, and it's not exactly the issue. So, coming back to you, Okoh, what do you think are the issues, the underlying ones? Or do you feel that we sometimes just joining the party because it sounds like the trendy thing to do at the moment?
Yes. Now, in characterizing this Gen Z movement and the people whom we see this on the streets, there are three kind of crowds you will normally see on the streets, okay? Now, the first kind of crowd are people whom we call hired crowds. Number two, we have people whom we call plastic crowds. Number three are the ones whom we call organic crowds. Hired crowds are these people whom obviously we know will be mobilized by the political class to join this movement. To
what gain? I want hired crowds to just be in the street and then...
No. Of course, it's for narrative control that, a government it's losing to its end. So, of course, politicians, you don't expect the people who are in the opposition just to be sitting, resting. Of course, they mobilize young people to go. And I'm aware of the mobilization that goes around. Then they're plastic crowds.
No, hang on. To do what? Because if these are just hired crowds to be in the street to go along with the other to go along with the other protesters, then they're joining the protest.
To create narrative.
How?
When the huger the crowd, the huger the narrative.
Absolutely,
okay?
But it goes to enabling for the initial protest. Remember that the protest that we're talking about is a peaceful protest for a certain agenda. Now, if you're saying that the first character of a crowd that joins this protest is to make the crowd bigger, well, then that is going towards the initial agenda, which is to have a protest. So it's not counterintuitive. It's joining the protest.
Yes, it's joining the protest. I'm saying but that it works in the favor of, say, for example, the protests are against government, and the people who hire these crowds are from the opposition. It's in the favor of the protest and in the favor of those who are anti-government. I think we are still just on the same. We are saying the same thing.
Is it wrong though?
So you have crowds for people who are pro-government and anti-government, but they're on the same agenda.
No. I think I'm saying the characteristics of the types of people we see on the streets. They can be either hired, they can either be plastic. Plastic are those people who are like, okay, Patrick was going to work, but I saw some crowd here. What are they protesting? Anti-Ruto? I joined the crowd. There are people who are like, it wasn't their purpose to join the protest, but they joined it as a result of seeing the protest. Then the third group is the organic crowd, people who are just generally angry. And I think they formed the hugest crowd, I think, generally for the people who are on the streets this other day. So it should be alarming for government. If you have a protest which has majorly hired crowds, you don't need to worry. But if the protest is formed by an organic crowd, you need to worry. Now, my challenge with the arrangement of how these Gen Z are
Who needs to worry?
Government.
Okay. If you see a large organic
crowd, you need to worry.
What would be the element for worry?
The element for worry is that these people are not people who are persuaded or paid to come here, but it is something that it's affecting a number of people, and it's a genuine concern. It's not some political persuasion that's happening around here. Now, my challenge with this Gen Z uprising is that, one, it's really predictable. I normally tell people, you cannot fool government twice. You cannot use the same strategy that you use Occupy Parliament, and the same strategy of mobilization, and think that it will work the same time. Government can be really funny. Even amongst those people who are protesting, government can send its own people there. Do you know the people who are protesting? Their government can mobilize for those, so that there are people. And the reason why I'm saying this is that it can use this as a purpose of confusion, both for those in the opposition and even amongst the Gen Z, so that a politician on the opposition will say, oh, so we have so many Gen Zs on our thing, not knowing that these are people who have been mobilized by government.
Another thing that is predictable is how police would handle these protests.
Yes.
Because every time when protests happen, there's a reason why every other protester comes out with water, with face masks, and at times even with helmets and toothpaste, because they know tear gas will be lobbed. And others recently, even in these demos, some were actually bidding goodbye to their people, simply because they were not sure that they would go back home. So when we talk about predictability, it is on both sides. But leave alone the predictability, leave alone the plastic crews or hired goons or whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. Let us look at the agenda that is being pushed. Are we sitting down to listen to the agenda that is being pushed, sit down, reflect, and implement those issues, address them such that these protests stop being the order of the day? Because we listen to our people, we listen to our Gen Zs, we are addressing their issues, and everyone is happy at the end of the day. Patrick,
I think we are not listening to what the young people are saying, and the best thing that will let you know that we are not listening, or the government is not listening, you just have to look at the address that the CS had after the demonstrations. The CS had a public address where he was just castigating everyone, including the judiciary, telling them, these people, we arrest them, the protesters, we bring them to court, but you give them favorable bail terms, and they are back on the streets. He was castigating everyone, castigating his fellow political leaders, castigating the protesters, all Kenyans in one address. But he was not talking about the issues that the Gen Zs have been raising. So I would have expected the CS to come out and say, yes, we know you are agitating for good governance. We know you are agitating for integrity and accountability. And these are the things that the government are willing to do. These are the things that we are putting in place. But we had him go to an extent where he actually threatened Kenyans, and he told the police, if you see someone near the police station, actually go ahead and shoot them. So the way the government is handling this whole thing, I think is the wrong way. Because the moment you bring the perception like it's the government or it's the leaders against the masses, you definitely are not going to win. I heard the MP for Kikuyu the other day just thumping and saying that the finance bill that you were against last year, we were able to pass it and there's nothing you can do. So that in itself is bringing that perception that the government or the leaders in this country want the people to perceive that it's them as the leaders of the government against the masses. And I can tell them that this is a war that they cannot win. This is a war that they cannot win, because at the end of the day, it's the people who put them there, and they have a right to send them home backpacking. So what they should be doing at this moment is actually looking at the issues and stop politicizing it, because I had them trying now to shift the blame to other political leaders. You'll hear them say, oh, it is Rigathi Gachagua, oh, it is Kalonzo. They are trying now to push this whole issue to a corner of politics, which is easier for them to deal with. It's hard for them to deal with the real issues, but it's easier for them to play politics around the whole issue. So for me, if I look at it, they are not willing to listen. They are not willing to listen. That's why their reaction is always political. Always political, and trying to blame their political opponents, instead of owning up as the people who are in government, owning up as the people who are sitting in those seats and saying, yes, we are ready to work. Can we sit down and talk about these issues and actually show some goodwill? Don't come and play some PR. Tell us that we've heard that you're not comfortable with us dishing out cash wherever we go. We are not going to do that. But after 2-3 weeks, we see the president doing the same thing that he said that he's going to stop. So the issue also of being sincere, because at the end of the day, we are people. At the end of the day, the president, the cabinet the cabinet secretaries, they are people also. There's a certain way also you can communicate to those people, and they'll feel that you are genuine, right? But the whole issue of bravado, chest thumping, I think that goes into infuriating the masses more, and that in itself is not bringing solutions.
Let's take a break at this point. Patrick Hungu is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and Mark Okoh, Youth Coordinator, National Students Council of Kenya. We're having a conversation around this perspective today and bringing in and saying, okay, well, this is discourse. This is where we are. Let us keep an eye on this. We'll continue with this conversation when we come back from this break. It's 23 minutes to 10.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Oh, great! This June, the biggest Club World Cup ever held is here. The 2025 FIFA Club World Cup. Recharge your subscription on your current bouquet for 2 months and get upgraded free to the next high bouquet for 60 days. A competition across the continent. 30 action-packed days of top-notch football from 32 best club teams from around the world. Recharge your subscription today to never miss a moment of a competition like never before. On the move, download StarTimes on and watch every goal, every moment, anytime, anywhere. StarTimes Sports, beyond passion. StarTimes, enjoy digital life.
Provides the inspiration for Leipzig.
This is not an announcement, it's a pact.
To plant trees and protect our environment.
To drive mentorship and education.
To grow businesses with funding and training.
To share with our communities.
Since 2020, we've honored this pact.
As we mark 5 years, we renew it because all impact begins with a pact. I&M Foundation, celebrating 5 years of impact, powered by I&M Bank.
The weather with SpiceFM.
Looking at cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning, we'll see highs of 25 and lows of 14 through Friday. It's 13 and sunny in Nakuru and 18 and sunny into Nyeri. 18 and sunny into Eldoret, while Mombasa at 26 is sunny. Malindi at 27 is sunny. It's sunny at 24 in Kisumu, when Kakamega is sunny at 21. 25 in Kampala, and at 25 Dar es Salaam is sunny. 2 degrees and warming up in Johannesburg. Mogadishu is sunny at 28, while Addis Ababa at 19 is sunny. Lagos at 25 is cloudy, while Kinshasa at 23 is partly sunny. Beijing cloudy at 27, while Paris at 20 is sunny, and London at 16 is sunny as well. We're looking into a cloudy New York at 19, going to highs of 22 and lows of 19.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, the clock means that we're coming out of traffic hour right about now. We'll get to the place where a little bit of traffic, then heading out towards Langata Road, coming in from Uhuru Gardens. And we see some traffic on Raila Odinga Way finding its way to connect with the junction of Ngong Road. And on the Thika Superhighway, some traffic coming in from Survey through towards the city, as well as coming off of Kiambu Road. Landis Road is busy, getting onto Haile Selassie, but that's the busiest that we'll see right about now. Keeping an eye on all of this, we'll check and keep it moving this morning. Spice FM KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
An advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and Mark Okoh, Youth Coordinator of the National Students Council of Kenya. Our youth perspective conversation around this Friday morning goes to the point now where we're saying that, steps... does there need to be a coming together of ideas? The conversation over the last couple of days is that there needs to be representatives that sit in the room. Does that need to happen, Mark?
Yeah, I think that needs to happen. But one of also the challenges that we need to ask ourselves is that why is there so much reluctancy amongst the young people towards having a conversation with with the political class, or in this case government, because they're the one who are mandated to implement a number of these things that the young people are asking. Because one of the things that we're also seeing, and I'd say this, that there comes to a place where there needs to be an end with decentralized structures. If you are to have a meaningful discussion, or to discuss some of these things that are affecting young people, the young people must give a few, or not all of them can say if the venue of discussing will be at State House, not all these young people can go to State House. If they can have a few of their representatives go there. But also what we are seeing is that a number of these young people do not want a number of these representatives, whether it's the student leaders, the youth leaders, do not want to go to have a discussion with government, because they feel like at that point they will start losing their credibility. Because what you're saying is that a number of times the youth representatives who go to State House or go to a meetup with government officials around this, then they start being castigated on these social platforms. That's why I think most young people who are leading them, saving its youth leaders, student leaders, are afraid of going to represent them because of that castigation itself.
Here we are talking about why the young people don't want to meet with the leadership there is. And we don't need to go far. One would say during the campaign period is where it all started. You look at the chanting that put this government into place in serikali ya mahasla mavijana, we even had songs, sisi atupangwingwi, you know what I mean? All that was geared towards bringing in the young people and getting that vote, right? Now there are even charters that were signed with the young people. Then you get to government and the young person is nowhere to be seen. When it comes to the taxes that are there, it is hurting the young person. Talk about how the economy is, unemployment and whatnot. All these are there. And when there are conversations on we will not meet you, they are meeting that was ahead on X Spaces with the president. One of the demands is fire them all, bring in people who will implement the issues. Who did we see come back on the table? The very same people who were fired. And the young people are asking, why should we then have this discussion with you if you've done the very same thing that we told you not to do? But then again, how do we move forward?
Well, I think the problem that we have in this country, Dennis, the issues that the Gen Zs are agitating for, these are actually common sense issues. I don't think we need to have a big baraza for us to sit down and tell the government that we need the government to respect the rule of law, right? We don't need a big baraza for us to tell the government that we need integrity and accountability. These are things that they had already promised us as they were campaigning. So we expected them to implement whatever they were telling us at that time. Why do they want us now to sit down with them and repeat the same thing, the same discussion that we had back then? So in short, what we are saying is that we've just realized that these people, they just want to take us through circles, round and round. Come, we sit, then we are done, they go back to default settings. As I said earlier, the president in 2024, when he was pushed to the corner, he went to X Spaces and he said, okay, my people, I've heard you. These are the measures that I'm going to put in place. This is what we are going to do. And after that, he fired the cabinet. Some of the people that fell off were taken as advisors, earning a salary equivalent to that of a cabinet secretary from our taxes. He made a lot of promises, and one promise that always lingers in my mind is when he said that this whole issue of display of opulence and dishing out cash, we are not going to do it anymore. No one is going to do it. But later he came back and said, I'm going to give this church 20 million and I'm going to go ahead and dish out cash, and there's nothing you people are going to do about it. Now, tell me as a reasonable person, because I believe the youth of this country are reasonable people, are you going to sit down with the same person doing the same thing that he promised not to do? Are you going to sit down with that kind of person? What kind of results do you think we are going to get out of that discussion, honestly?
Okoh, I'd want to ask the question, does the government want to have conversations with Kenyans, and is there any evidence of that?
Yeah, in terms of asking that, before answering that, answer that question. Now, whenever a government is caught up in a form of crisis, I wouldn't necessarily want to quote it in a crisis, but in a serious situation, there are two things that government normally checks in, whether it is in control of. Now, one, you check, are you still in control of power? And two, are you still in control of the narrative? Control of power in the sense that you have not been overthrown, because in such a crisis where people are protesting, etc., and what we saw even last year, the parliament being banned, they're almost losing control of, legitimacy as the legislative house. Now, the second part is that once, you are still in control of power. The second bit is that, are you still in control of the narrative? And I was sharing with somebody status, I do not want to mention his name, but a very close ally of the president. I told him, if you do not have control of the narrative, all these things that you're doing won't make sense. Because you see, if the president has already been painted as a murderer, that is the first thing that comes to the mind of the average Kenyan. Whether you tell them about SHA, whether you tell them about the housing, whatever, you tell them about new funding model, all these things are diluted, and it's very dangerous. And I was telling them, if the young people are able to do this year, they do it on June 25th on 2026, and they do it on June 25th on 2027, 2 months to an election, it will be very, very dangerous for you. Now, in terms of your question, is in terms of whether they really want to listen. The more things change, the more they still remain the question. They still remain the same. The fundamental thing is that, are they politically persuaded to sit with you? That's the first thing they normally ask themselves. Because if you see, the things that the protest in 2025, in 2024, in 2023, even the one that was led by Raila, the Sufuria protest, they are the underlying same issues, youth unemployment, inclusivity, etc. Now, for them to bring you to sit with you on the table, they need to ask themselves, are they politically persuaded? The reason as to why they normally bring somebody like Raila on board is because they feel they are politically persuaded that the moment you bring Raila Amolo Odinga on board, there will be stability. The challenge with the young people is that working with decentralized structures is really hard, because one, you don't know whom to speak with. If you speak with Kungu today, he will be bashed on social media that he is betraying the movement. So these people are not centralized, they have not been centralized in a way that it's easy to even see whom to discuss with.
Isn't implementation of the agenda and the issues raised by the young people then a point of conversation that does not need people to sit on the table?
You really don't have to sit down, honestly. Let us be honest when we are talking about these issues. We've had a lot of, even our politicians, they go to a lot of retreats. They go to sit down and to come up with reports that do not really help us. So talking really won't help us. What we want the government to do, we want it to implement its manifesto. We want it to respect the constitution and govern within the law. That is what we want. Now, a simple thing like the case of Albert Ojwang, a simple thing like having the DIG held to account, that would really speak volumes, right? Now, the reason why 25th was as hot as it was because the youth had just witnessed, or seen the murder of Albert Ojwang. And from where we sit, we can see that the people who sit in the high places are kind of being protected, and the small fish is being left to hang. Now, you tell a youth who's sitting at home is looking at that whole situation, and you're telling that youth, come, we talk. First of all, can you implement the law fairly? Let it apply to the big fishes and to the small fishes. We don't want it to seem like the moment you have a senior position in government, you are untouchable. But the rest of us who are down kidogo, we can be left to fry. So there are simple things that the government can do. And as I said when we started, these issues are issues of common sense, right? From where I sit, I don't think this whole thing of saying that we need to sit down and talk will be wasting our time. The government knows what it is supposed to do, and it is deliberately failing to do so for their own reasons, right? We've seen the Auditor General, the Controller of Budget come out tell us that there are trillions of shillings that are being withdrawn irregularly. Now, things like that of lacking accountability and integrity, right? Do we need really to sit down with you and tell you that your government needs to be accountable? Do we really need to do that?
So a conversation doesn't need to happen. Is that what you're saying?
We've already had this conversation. That is what I'm saying. We've already had these conversations before. It's just that the government is not willing to implement whatever we discuss. They know what is ailing this country. They do. They know what is ailing these young people. They do. They are just not willing to work towards finding solutions for that. They just want to play politics with this thing. And I'm actually very disappointed that our parliament will trivialize what happened on 25th and play politics with it. Yeah? Trying to target their political nemesis. And, trying to bring this whole issue to a corner of politics only. That is wrong. And that's why I'm saying sitting and discussing with people who have that kind of mentality, for me, I don't think it's going to work. They already know what is required of them. They're just not willing to find the solutions.
So one side is not willing and that has been clear across board. I mean, and in terms of us getting to the point whereby you need to think about what the possible solutions would then be. And if it has been constantly that one side knows what to do and has not made the steps towards making the right decision, how then do we deal with this situation? Obviously, going back to the streets repetitively, for a lot of people is the answer. For some people it's not. But how do we then make the next steps towards saying we must find a solution?
Yeah, first of all, I need to say that I do disagree with the point that we need to discard the option, first of all, of dialogue or, sitting down. I think, one, there are two purposes that a dialogue or that sitting down does. One, of course, to buy time, because all these things cannot just be, if it's around solving youth unemployment, it cannot be just solved at, once at a go. Some of these things you need to, there needs to be some time to, to put some of these measures, etc. But two, also just to create that atmosphere to do that, because if you see at one of the best case studies, if you see even as to how President Ruto managed the opposition or was able to bring an inclusive government around with the broad-based framework, it doesn't start by just, appointing Mbadi to this position, etc. No, it starts from him, first of all, being perceived to have a conversation with Raila Amolo Odinga to create that atmosphere, even amongst his political constituents, that, this will be the direction. So, one, the purpose of that conversation is one to create, because you cannot you can't talk or work with people who are angry. You need to create, first of all, that atmosphere. In terms of willingness, as I told you, it all goes to, are they politically persuaded to actually work with you? Because if you run around as disorganized, somebody will just go to a minority group that is much organized and work with them, as such as the Raila side. And something just now, by the way, and I've heard him speak about around the Lagat issue so much. Many people have really asked me whether the president will really take out a DIG Lagat. And in my thoughts, one, morally, he would have had to. But I think politically, I don't foresee him removing DIG Lagat for three reasons. One, the moment he removes DIG Lagat, everyone who is loyal to the president, Akina Sudi, Raymond, Murkomen, would get to their mind that they are dispensable. That no matter how loyal you are to me, you are dispensable. That's the first message that you'll be sending to all other people that are loyal to you.
Is the DIG loyal to the president, or is he there to serve the country and equally ensure that the police service is independent and operates within the law.
This is the thing. Of course, we know how things operate in this country. There is the technocratic way in which we expect people to operate in this country. But of course, this is a country that operates within some political arithmetics. The second reason as to why the president will not remove DIG Lagat in my view is that, when somebody wants to come and steal from you, they don't directly come to fight you. So they start with the soldier, the person at your gate. But the most important reason is that anyone who is loyal to the president will feel they're dispensable, and
but they should be.
Why then have a president who cannot guarantee that there is rule of law and constitutionalism? Why have him in place?
Yeah, that is the big question. That is a big question, because if he's there just to play political games, then we don't need him there. If he's there to just serve his political friends, then he has no business to be sitting in that seat. And I think that's the biggest problem that we are having with this government. They are failing to look at the real issues, and that is the thing that is making Kenyans angry. We need to see this government tackling the real issues. And as I said earlier, I was really disappointed by what CS Murkomen came out to say, because I really expected him to at least assure Kenyans, assure the Gen Zs that we've heard you. I expected that sort of message. Mm-hmm. We've heard you, and this is what we are willing to do. But he did the extreme opposite of that. He went ahead to even threaten these people, telling the police, if these people come to the police station, shoot them. Now, you are dealing with a generation that is not even afraid to die. You're dealing with a generation that is even writing obituaries days before going for maandamanos. Now, do you think now threatening them with guns and bullets is going to do anything? It's going to infuriate them. Now, the crowds that we saw on 25th were actually bigger than the crowds that we saw last year in June. Now, instead of trying to find a way to try and make sure that these people, the anger have subsided, they are threatening these people and thinking that will work. The way I look at it, and I think the president and his government needs to be a little bit serious about this whole issue. If you are put in power and you are there to serve the public, and the way you are serving them, the public is telling you, we are not okay with the way you are doing your things. We need you to do things differently. And the issues that they are telling you are not strange issues. They are issues that you actually know, and they are issues that are implementable. Then you choose not to hear what they are saying. You choose to threaten them. I think by going down that road, Dennis, we are going to find ourselves in a situation that will be very, very difficult to control. And to some extent, I think sometimes I look at it and I think maybe that's what they want us to do, so that we don't have elections in 2027, as Moses Kure has been saying, if you think about it. Because if you are telling you that really we are not okay with the way the situation is, and you're still insisting on doing things the way you are doing them, then sometimes we get to a situation where we have to infer, what do you really want?
And I think to sum it all up, it's just the idea that the presidency, the leadership is there to serve the people, not the people to serve them. I think that's where I'll just end it into.
Yeah. There's still questions up in the air. There's still conversations to be had, and here we are, and it's necessary that we keep engaging. Absolutely. I want to thank you both for being here this morning. Marco Okoh and Patrick Kungu, thank you for joining and closing out this week's conversation of the Situation Room. Sante Sana. Have yourselves a good weekend. Thank you so much, and let's talk again and keep the conversations front and center. Good morning.